The emergency room doors exploded open at 5:47 a.m., and nobody noticed the older woman in scrubs being slammed against the wall by two security guards, blood smeared across white tiles. A phone clattered to the floor. Patients backed away, filming everything, while the blonde nurse with graying temples didn't scream, didn't beg, just stared at the man choking her with cold, terrifying calm. "You're making a mistake," she whispered. Security Chief Marcus Webb laughed in her face. "Lady, you're done here." What he didn't know was that in exactly 9 minutes, federal vehicles would surround Riverside General Hospital and his entire world would detonate. The woman he was throwing out like garbage? She wasn't just any nurse. Before we dive into this story, I need to ask you something. Stay with me until the very end, because what happens next will shock you. If you're enjoying this, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in Riverside General's East Wing flickered like they'd been doing for 3 years, casting shadows that made everything look sicker than it already was. Morgan Reese pushed through the employee entrance at 5:43 a.m., her navy backpack slung over one shoulder, hair pulled back in a regulation bun that hadn't changed since her last deployment ended 14 months ago. She looked tired. Hell, she was tired. But tired didn't matter when you had a patient coding 2 floors up, and approximately 4 minutes to reach him before his heart gave out permanently. The problem was Marcus Webb. Marcus had worked security at Riverside General for 19 years, which meant he'd been bullying people in this building longer than some of the residents had been alive. 6'2", 230 pounds of ego wrapped in a uniform that was always one size too tight. He liked cornering young nurses in empty hallways, liked making doctors nervous, liked reminding everyone that he controlled who came in, who went out, and who got embarrassed in between. This morning, he was standing directly in front of the ICU elevator bank with his arms crossed, blocking the hallway like he owned it. Morgan didn't slow down. "Excuse me," she said, moving past him. His hand shot out, gripping her shoulder hard enough to bruise. "Where the hell do you think you're going?" Morgan stopped, turned, looked at his hand, then at his face. "ICU 7. I've got a patient." Marcus's smile was ugly. "Nobody told me about any new assignment. I don't need your permission." "Actually, sweetheart, you do. This is a restricted floor. That means I decide who gets access, and right now, you don't have it." Morgan's jaw tightened. She'd dealt with men like Marcus before. Overseas, stateside, everywhere in between. Men who thought authority meant cruelty. Men who mistook compliance for weakness. "Check the Federal Registry," she said quietly. "I'm cleared." Marcus laughed, loud and sharp, like she'd just told the funniest joke he'd heard all week. "Federal Registry? Jesus Christ, what'd you do? Watch a YouTube video on hospital protocol?" He leaned closer, his breath smelling like stale coffee and cigarettes. "Let me explain something to you, lady. I've been here almost 20 years. I know every nurse, every doctor, every janitor in this building, and I sure as hell don't know you." "That's your problem, not mine." His face darkened. "What'd you just say to me?" Morgan met his eyes without blinking. "I said move." That's when Marcus grabbed her by both arms and slammed her against the wall so hard her vision blurred. Pain shot through her shoulder blades. Her backpack hit the floor. Somewhere down the hall, a woman gasped. "You don't talk to me like that," Marcus hissed, his face inches from hers. "You don't walk into my hospital acting like you run the place." Morgan didn't struggle, didn't shout, just stared at him with the kind of calm that only comes from being held at gunpoint in places most people couldn't find on a map. "Get your hands off me," she said, voice flat. "Final warning." Marcus grinned. "Or what?" "Or you're going to regret it for the rest of your life." He shoved her harder against the wall, and that's when the second security guard, a younger guy named Travis with nervous eyes, stepped forward. "Marcus, maybe we should just—" "Shut up, Travis. But she might actually—" "I said shut up." Morgan's wrist throbbed where Marcus's fingers dug into the old scar tissue from a field surgery she'd performed on herself in Kandahar. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A patient somewhere started crying, and in the corner of her vision, Morgan saw phones coming out, cameras pointing. "Good," she thought distantly. "Let them film this." Marcus leaned in close enough that she could see the broken capillaries in his nose. "You've got about 5 seconds to tell me who the hell you think you are, or I'm calling the cops and having you arrested for trespassing." Morgan smiled then, not a friendly smile, the kind of smile that made Travis take an involuntary step backward. "My name is Morgan Reese," she said softly. "DoD Medical Services, Special Operations Trauma Division. I was assigned to this facility 72 hours ago under federal contract to provide classified medical oversight for a protected military witness currently admitted under an alias in ICU 7. And you just assaulted a federal contractor in the middle of committing her lawful duties. The color drained from Marcus's face. Bullshit, he said, but his voice wavered. You want to bet your career on that? For 3 long seconds, nobody moved. Then Marcus made his second mistake of the morning. Instead of letting her go, instead of stepping back and calling his supervisor, he doubled down. I don't care who you think you are, he snarled. You're leaving, now. He yanked her away from the wall and started dragging her toward the exit, his grip iron tight on her upper arm. Travis followed reluctantly, looking like he wanted to be literally anywhere else. Morgan didn't resist, didn't fight back, just let herself be pulled across the polished floor while a dozen witnesses stared and filmed and whispered, because she knew what was coming. She checked her watch, 5:51 a.m., any second now. They were halfway to the main entrance when the alarms started. Not fire alarms, not the usual hospital codes. A flat mechanical shriek that most people in the building had never heard before. The kind of sound that meant something had gone catastrophically wrong with a federally protected patient. Marcus froze. Morgan closed her eyes. No, she whispered. No, no, no. What the hell is that? Travis asked. Morgan ripped her arm free from Marcus's grip and ran. She didn't ask permission, didn't look back, just sprinted toward the stairwell because the elevators would be locked down now, her boots echoing against tile as the alarm screamed and screamed and screamed. Behind her, Marcus shouted something, but she was already gone, taking stairs 3 at a time, her lungs burning, her shoulder throbbing where he'd slammed her into the wall. 7th floor. ICU wing. Past the nurses' station where 2 staffers stood frozen in confusion. Room 714. The door was closed. Morgan shoved it open. Inside, a young man, 26, Army sergeant, 3 tours in intelligence operations, was seizing violently on the bed while his monitor screamed warnings. His eyes had rolled back. Foam gathered at the corners of his mouth. The crash cart sat unused in the corner because the overnight nurse had panicked and run to get help instead of staying with the patient. God damn it, Morgan breathed. She moved on autopilot, muscle memory from 100 emergencies and worse conditions taking over. Airway first. She tilted his head back, cleared his mouth, checked his breathing, pulse weak and thready. Oxygen sat at 73% and dropping. She grabbed the oxygen mask, fitted it over his face, cranked the flow to 15 liters. Come on, Sergeant, she muttered. Don't you quit on me. His name wasn't really Sergeant, of course. His name was Derek Vance. And 2 weeks ago, he'd walked into a federal building in downtown Seattle with evidence that military-grade pain medications, fentanyl derivatives, synthetic morphine, experimental trauma drugs were being systematically stolen from veteran treatment centers and sold on the black market. And someone at Riverside General Hospital was running the operation. That's why Derek was here under an alias. That's why Morgan had been sent. That's why this patient couldn't die. Because if he did, the whole investigation collapsed. She checked his IV line. Saline, nothing else. That was wrong. He was supposed to be on a continuous medication drip to stabilize his heart after the accident that had put him here. An accident that Morgan strongly suspected wasn't an accident at all. Someone had tampered with his medication. Someone inside this hospital. The door burst open behind her. Marcus stood there, red-faced and furious, with Travis hovering nervously behind him and a white-coated doctor Morgan didn't recognize. What the hell do you think you're doing? Marcus demanded. Morgan didn't look up. She was too busy adjusting Derek's IV, checking his vitals, making sure he didn't aspirate. Saving his life, she said, which is what I was trying to do before you decided to play cowboy. The doctor, young, early 30s, name tag reading Dr. Ellis, pushed past Marcus and stopped dead when he saw Derek's monitor. Jesus Christ, he breathed. When did he go into SVT? About 3 minutes ago, Morgan said. Where's his cardiologist? Dr. Brennan's not in until 7. Then you're going to have to do. Get me adenosine 6 milligrams and prepare for cardioversion if this doesn't convert. Dr. Ellis stared at her. Who are you? DoD medical contractor. And unless you want to explain to the federal government why a protected witness died on your watch, I suggest you get me that adenosine right now. He hesitated for maybe half a second, then bolted from the room. Marcus stepped forward, his hand moving toward his radio. I'm calling this in. You can't just say pump. Touch that radio and I'll have you arrested for federal obstruction, Morgan said without looking at him. Her hands moved steadily, checking Derek's pupils, his skin temperature, his capillary refill. You've already interfered with my duties once this morning. You really want to double down? You assaulted me, Marcus said, but there was uncertainty creeping into his voice now. Morgan laughed, cold and sharp. Funny, because about 30 people filmed you slamming me against a wall and dragging me out of the building. You want to compare legal liability? We can do that, but later. Right now, shut up and let me work. Dr. Ellis returned with the adenosine, his hand shaking slightly as he passed her the syringe. 6 milligrams IV push, Morgan said. On my count. 3, 2, 1, push. She administered the medication, watching Derek's monitor. For 5 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then his heart rate started to slow. The irregular rhythm began to stabilize. His oxygen saturation ticked upward. 75, 78, 82. Morgan exhaled slowly. Heart rate normalizing, Dr. Ellis said, sounding stunned. Blood pressure coming back up. How did you... Oh, what? 9 years as a combat medic, Morgan said quietly. You see enough people die, you get good at keeping them alive. She stayed at Derek's bedside for another 10 minutes, monitoring his vitals, adjusting his oxygen, making sure the crisis had actually passed. The kid, because that's what he looked like now, just a scared kid who'd seen too much, didn't wake up, but his breathing steadied and his color started coming back. Finally, Morgan straightened, her back cracking. That's when she heard the sirens outside. Not ambulances. These were different, deeper. The kind of sirens that meant federal law enforcement was about to make someone's day significantly worse. Marcus heard them too. His face went pale. What did you do? He whispered. Morgan looked at him for a long moment. I didn't do anything. You did. She walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. 7 stories below, 3 black SUVs and 2 military police vehicles had surrounded the hospital's main entrance. Men in tactical gear were already moving toward the doors. When a DoD-assigned medical specialist is prevented from reaching a federally protected patient, Morgan said conversationally, and that patient subsequently goes into cardiac arrest, it triggers an automatic federal emergency response. Protocol established after the 2019 Sacramento incident. They take witness protection very seriously now. Marcus's mouth worked soundlessly. But I didn't know! You didn't ask. Morgan turned to face him fully. You saw a woman you didn't recognize and you assumed she didn't belong. You didn't check credentials, didn't contact administration, didn't follow any actual protocol. You just decided you were right and everyone else was wrong. She's telling the truth, Travis said quietly from the doorway. Everyone turned to look at him. He held up his phone, showing some kind of official database. I just checked the Federal Medical Registry. Morgan Reese, DoD Special Operations Trauma Division, assigned to Riverside General on March 4th for classified protective detail. Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. Dr. Ellis cleared his throat. I should probably call the Chief of Staff. They're already here, Morgan said, nodding toward the hallway. Sure enough, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside, multiple sets, moving fast. Voices barked orders, radios crackled. Then the door opened and 4 people entered, 2 in suits, 2 in military police uniforms. The older of the suited men, black, early 50s, with eyes that had seen way too much bureaucratic nonsense, looked around the room, took in Derek's stabilized condition, then focused on Morgan. Ms. Reese, are you injured? Bruised shoulder, minor contusions, nothing serious? And the patient? Stable. Went into SVT approximately 12 minutes ago. Administered adenosine, successful conversion, but someone tampered with his medication protocol. His cardiac stabilization drip was disconnected. The suited man's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind his eyes. I see. He turned to Marcus. You're Marcus Webb? Marcus nodded, looking like a cornered animal. Federal Agent David Price, Department of Justice. You're being detained for questioning regarding interference with a federal investigation. You have the right to remain silent. Wait, Marcus interrupted. Wait, this is insane. I was just doing my job. I didn't know who she was. You assaulted a federal contractor, Agent Price said flatly. You prevented her from accessing a protected witness. You endangered an ongoing investigation. And based on the security footage we're currently reviewing, you did all of this while being explicitly warned of the consequences. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. Take him downstairs, Price said to the MPs, and someone get hospital administration down here. We need to talk about their security protocols. As Marcus was led from the room, no longer dragging anyone, no longer in control, just a scared man in a too-tight uniform who'd made the wrong choice, Agent Price turned back to Morgan. "You handled that well," he said quietly. "I didn't handle anything. I just tried to do my job, which is exactly what we needed." He glanced at Derek, still unconscious but breathing steadily. "The patient's testimony is critical to this case. If we lose him—" "You won't," Morgan said. "Not on my watch." Price studied her for a moment. "We read your service record. Kandahar, Helmand Province, attached to the 75th Ranger Regiment Medical Detachment. 3 commendations, 2 field promotions, 1 incident where you performed emergency surgery in an active firefight." Morgan said nothing. "You're exactly the kind of specialist we needed for this assignment," Price continued. "But I have to ask, why'd you leave?" Morgan looked down at Derek's sleeping face. "Because eventually you get tired of watching good people die for bad reasons." "And now?" "Now I'm trying to make sure they don't die for no reason at all." Price nodded slowly. "Fair enough." He turned to leave, then paused. "By the way, we're going to need a full statement about what happened this morning. Every detail. The assault, the delay, the patient's cardiac event, everything. I'll write it up. And Ms. Reese, thank you for not letting him die. After everyone left, the agents, the MPs, the shell-shocked Dr. Ellis, Morgan pulled a chair up to Derek's bedside and sat down heavily. Her shoulder throbbed. Her head ached. She was pretty sure she'd pulled something in her back during the sprint up the stairs. But Derek was alive. That was what mattered. She checked his vitals one more time, heart rate steady at 78, oxygen at 96%, blood pressure holding stable, then allowed herself to close her eyes for just a moment. When she opened them again, Hospital Administrator Patricia Hammond was standing in the doorway, looking like someone had just told her the building was about to be condemned. "Ms. Reese," Hammond said carefully, "I owe you an apology." Morgan raised an eyebrow. "Do you?" "Marcus Webb has been a concern for some time. We've had complaints, but he's been here so long and he has friends on the board, and—" She stopped, seeming to realize how that sounded. "That's not an excuse, it's just context. Context doesn't help when someone dies." Hammond flinched. "No, it doesn't." She stepped fully into the room, her expensive shoes clicking on the tile. "The federal agents are downstairs reviewing security footage. They're also requesting personnel files, incident reports, and disciplinary records going back 5 years." "Good. They're talking about potential criminal charges, federal obstruction, civil rights violations. They're using words like pattern of abuse and institutional negligence." Morgan looked at her without sympathy. "And I need to know how bad this is going to get." "That depends." "On what?" "On how many other complaints you buried, how many other nurses Marcus terrorized, how many other people were hurt while your board did nothing because it was politically inconvenient." Hammond's face went white. "We didn't—" "I've been here 3 days," Morgan said quietly. "And in those 3 days, I've watched Marcus Webb humiliate 2 nurses, threaten a resident, and physically block a janitor from entering an elevator. That's just what I saw." "How much didn't I see?" Hammond didn't answer. "You want to know how bad it's going to get?" Morgan stood up, her full height not quite matching Hammond's expensive heels, but her presence somehow filling the entire room. "It's going to get as bad as it needs to get. Because if this hospital protected a bully to avoid making waves, that's on you. And when the federal investigation is finished, everyone's going to know exactly what kind of institution you're running here." "But surely—" "There's no but," Morgan said. "There's just consequences. Maybe you should have thought about that before you let someone like Marcus Webb run your security department for 19 years. Hammond opened her mouth, closed it, then turned and walked away without another word. Morgan sat back down. Her phone buzzed. A text from Agent Price. "Need you downstairs in 30 minutes for preliminary statement. And Reese, we found something in the security footage. You're going to want to see this." Morgan frowned. What kind of something? The kind that suggests Marcus Webb wasn't working alone. Morgan's blood went cold. She looked at Derek, still unconscious, still vulnerable. "What the hell did you stumble into, kid?" she whispered. But Derek didn't answer. And somewhere in the floors below, federal agents were pulling apart Riverside General Hospital piece by piece, looking for evidence of a conspiracy that apparently went deeper than anyone had realized. Morgan checked her watch, 6:47 a.m. The sun was coming up outside, painting the hospital walls gold. It was going to be a very long day. And somewhere in this building, someone who tried to kill Derek Vance was probably starting to panic, realizing that their carefully constructed operation was about to come crashing down around them. Morgan stood, squared her shoulders despite the pain, and headed for the door. She'd saved Derek once this morning. Now she needed to figure out who'd tried to kill him and make sure they didn't get a second chance. The hallway stretched empty and silent ahead of her, fluorescent lights humming their eternal song. Somewhere in the distance, an alarm chimed softly. A cart rattled past. A phone rang unanswered at the nurse's station. Everything looked normal. But Morgan had been in enough combat zones to know normal was exactly when things got dangerous. She pulled out her phone and called Agent Price. "I'm on my way down," she said. "But first, I need to know something. That footage you found. Who else had access to Derek's room last night?" Price was quiet for a long moment. "That's what we need to talk about," he finally said. "Because according to our timeline, 3 people entered that room between midnight and 5 a.m. One was the overnight nurse. One was a janitor. And the third? The third was Dr. Richard Brennan, Derek's assigned cardiologist, the man who wrote his medication protocol." Price paused. "The man who personally disconnected his cardiac drip at 4:17 this morning and never documented it." Morgan's grip tightened on her phone. "Where is he now?" "That's the problem," Price said grimly. "Nobody knows. He didn't show up for his 7 a.m. rounds. His office is empty. And his car's still in the parking garage, but he's nowhere in the building. He ran, or someone made him run. Either way, we've got a federal witness who was almost murdered, a missing doctor, and a hospital security chief who just happened to prevent the one person who could have stopped it from reaching the patient in time." Price's voice hardened. "This wasn't random, Reese. This was coordinated." Morgan looked back at Derek's room, where armed MPs now stood guard outside the door. "Then we'd better find Dr. Brennan before whoever's running this operation decides to clean up their loose ends." "Already working on it. But Reese, watch your back. If they tried to kill one federal witness, they won't hesitate to eliminate a federal contractor who's asking too many questions." The call ended. Morgan stood alone in the hallway, her shadow stretching long across the polished floor, and realized with cold certainty that this case was about to get much worse before it got better. Somewhere in Riverside General Hospital, a conspiracy was unraveling, and people were going to die trying to keep it hidden. Morgan took the stairs again, not trusting elevators in a building where someone had just tried to commit murder. Her boots echoed in the concrete stairwell, each step sending fresh pain through her bruised shoulder. 3rd floor, 2nd floor, ground level. She pushed through the metal door into organized chaos. The main lobby had been transformed into something resembling a military checkpoint. Federal agents in dark suits moved between clusters of terrified staff members. 2 MPs stood flanking the main entrance. Hospital administrators huddled near the information desk, their expensive clothes and panicked expressions making them look like hostages at their own facility. Agent Price stood near the security office, talking rapidly into his phone. When he saw Morgan, he ended the call and gestured her over. "We've got a problem," he said without preamble. "Just one?" Price didn't smile. "Dr. Richard Brennan's wife reported him missing 20 minutes ago. Says he left for his shift at 6:30 this morning, same as always. Never mentioned running, never seemed anxious, just kissed her goodbye and drove off in his Tesla. The Tesla that's currently sitting in your parking garage." "Exactly." Price pulled out his tablet, swiped through several security camera images. "We've been reviewing footage from every camera in this building. Brennan arrived at 6:41 a.m., parked on level 3, took the elevator to the main floor, walked through these doors." He pointed at the entrance behind them. "And then 30 seconds later, he walked right back out, got into a black sedan with tinted windows, and disappeared." Morgan studied the grainy footage. Brennan looked wrong. His shoulders hunched forward, his face turned away from cameras, his gait stiff and unnatural. "Someone grabbed him," she said. "That's what we think. But here's what doesn't make sense. If they wanted him dead, why not just kill him? Why the extraction?" "Because he knows something they need to control." Price nodded slowly. "Or something they need him to recant. Derek Vance's testimony hinges partly on medical documentation that Brennan provided. If Brennan suddenly claims he made mistakes, falsified records, was coerced, the whole case falls apart." "Exactly." Morgan looked around the lobby, at the scared faces and whispered conversations. "Who else knew Derek was here? That's what we're trying to figure out. The witness protection placement was strictly need to know. Hospital administration Brennan, the ICU head nurse, and select security personnel. Marcus Webb." Price's expression hardened. Yeah, Marcus Webb. Where is he now? Interview room 2. He's been screaming about lawyers for the past 40 minutes. Price checked his watch. But his story keeps changing. First he said he didn't know who you were. Then he said he was just following protocol. Now he's claiming someone in administration told him to keep unauthorized personnel away from ICU 7. Did they? Administrator Hammond denies it completely. Says she never spoke to Webb about you or Derek or anything else. Says she didn't even know Webb was working this morning. Morgan processed that. So either she's lying or Webb is. Or they both are. Price gestured toward the security office. We pulled Webb's personnel file. 19 years at Riverside General. Spotless record, according to official documentation. But when we started talking to staff off the record, he shook his head. Different story entirely. Complaints about harassment, intimidation, threats. All of them filed, none of them investigated. Hammond buried them. Or someone above her did. We're finding a pattern here, Reese. This hospital has a serious problem with accountability, and it goes higher than one asshole security chief. A young agent approached, holding a laptop. Sir, you need to see this. Price took the computer, his eyes scanning whatever was on screen. His jaw tightened. What? Morgan asked. Financial records. We subpoenaed the hospital's banking information an hour ago. Look at this. He turned the screen toward her. Morgan saw a spreadsheet filled with numbers that meant nothing to her at first. Then Price highlighted a specific column. These are medication inventory discrepancies going back 18 months. Fentanyl, morphine, synthetic opioids, all of it supposedly used for patient care, all of it properly documented and signed off by attending physicians. But when we cross-reference actual patient records with medication dispensation logs, we're finding massive gaps. Drugs being signed out for patients who weren't even admitted. Dosages that would kill an elephant being prescribed for routine procedures. It's all fake. Someone's been systematically looting the pharmacy and covering their tracks with fraudulent paperwork. Morgan felt something cold settle in her stomach. How much are we talking about? Street value? Conservatively? $7 million over 18 months. The number hung in the air between them. Jesus Christ, Morgan breathed. And here's the thing. Every single fraudulent prescription was signed off by someone in senior hospital administration, chief of staff, medical director, head of pharmacy services. Price's expression was grim. This isn't one rogue doctor. This is institutional corruption at the highest level. And Derek found out. Derek was a military intelligence analyst attached to Veterans Affairs Medical Oversight. He started noticing patterns. Medications ordered for VA patients that never arrived, treatment delays, suspicious deaths. He started digging, found evidence linking Riverside General to a distribution network selling stolen military-grade pharmaceuticals to street dealers across 3 states. Morgan looked towards the elevators, thinking about Derek lying unconscious 7 floors up. So they tried to kill him. Not just tried, they almost succeeded. That car accident 2 weeks ago that put him in ICU? We've been analyzing the crash reconstruction. Brake lines were cut. Someone ran him off the road deliberately, made it look random. Price's voice dropped. And when that didn't work, they sent someone into his hospital room to finish the job. Brennan. Maybe. Or maybe Brennan was just the fall guy, and now they've taken him to make sure he can't talk. Morgan's mind raced through possibilities, connections, implications. You said select security personnel knew about Derek's placement. Who specifically? Price checked his notes. Marcus Webb, obviously. His second in command, a guy named Travis Nolan. And the night shift supervisor, woman named Sandra Martinez. Where's Martinez now? Called in sick this morning, says she's got food poisoning. Convenient timing. Very. Price closed his laptop. We've got people heading to her apartment now. But Reese, here's what worries me. If this conspiracy goes as deep as we think, we have no idea who we can trust inside this building. Hospital staff, security, maybe even other patients could be compromised. What about Derek's guard detail? Military police pulled from Fort Carson specifically because they have no local connections. They're solid. Price paused. But they can't watch him forever. Eventually he has to testify, which means eventually he has to wake up. And when he does, someone's going to try again. Morgan knew he was right. So what's the play? We're moving him. Tonight, once we've secured a federal medical facility in Denver. Until then, we lock down ICU 7, no one in or out except vetted federal personnel. Price met her eyes. Which includes you. I need you on that floor, Reese. You're the only medical specialist we have who we know isn't compromised. I haven't slept in 36 hours. I'll get you coffee. Morgan almost smiled. Almost. What about Marcus Webb? You really think he's part of this or just a useful idiot? I think he's a bully who got played by people smarter than him. But either way, he interfered with a federal investigation and assaulted a government contractor. He's looking at serious time. Price's expression hardened. And when people are looking at serious time, they start making deals. Let's see what he knows. They walked toward interview room 2, passing clusters of federal agents and terrified hospital staff. Through a window, Morgan caught sight of Administrator Hammond sitting in another interview room, her perfect composure finally cracking as a female agent questioned her relentlessly. Good, Morgan thought. Interview room 2 was smaller, uglier, with fluorescent lights that made everyone look sick. Marcus Webb sat at a metal table, his uniform rumpled, his face slick with sweat. A public defender sat next to him, looking tired and overworked. When Morgan walked in behind Agent Price, Marcus's eyes went wide. No, he said immediately. No, she can't be in here. Ms. Reese is a federal witness, Price said calmly, taking a seat across from Marcus. She has every right to observe this interview. She assaulted me. Morgan leaned against the wall, saying nothing. Just looked at him with the same calm she'd shown when he'd had her pinned against the wall 4 hours ago. The public defender cleared his throat. Agent Price, my client has been cooperative. Your client has changed his story 3 times in 40 minutes, Price interrupted. That's not cooperation. That's panic. He opened a folder, spread several photographs across the table. Let me show you something, Marcus. These are surveillance images from this morning. Here you are, grabbing Ms. Reese. Here you are, slamming her against a wall. Here you are, dragging her toward the exit while she's clearly stating her federal credentials. Marcus stared at the photos, his face going pale. Now, Price continued, you claim Administrator Hammond told you to keep unauthorized personnel away from ICU 7, but Hammond denies ever giving you that instruction. So either you're lying or she is. Which is it? Marcus's mouth worked soundlessly. Let me help you out, Price said, his voice deceptively gentle. We've been reviewing your phone records, and we found something interesting. At 5:32 this morning, 15 minutes before Ms. Reese arrived, you received a text message from an unknown number. The message said, and I quote, blonde woman, mid-40s, navy backpack. Do not let her reach ICU 7 under any circumstances. The room went dead silent. Morgan pushed off the wall. Who sent that text, Marcus? I don't know, he whispered. Bullshit. Price held up a hand, stopping her. The number was a burner phone purchased 6 days ago at a convenience store in Boulder. Paid for in cash, no ID required. We're pulling surveillance footage from the store now, but that takes time. He leaned forward. So here's what I think happened. Someone contacted you, gave you specific instructions to prevent Ms. Reese from reaching Derek Vance. You followed those instructions without question, because that's what you do. You follow orders from people you think have authority. Marcus's breathing had gone shallow and rapid. But here's your problem, Price continued. Whoever sent you that text used you. They knew a federal contractor was coming. They knew exactly what she looked like. They knew which floor she was heading to. And they knew that if they could delay her just long enough, their inside man could finish the job. He tapped one of the photographs. You didn't just assault a federal employee, Marcus. You participated in a conspiracy to murder a protected witness. No, Marcus said, his voice cracking. No, I didn't know. Then help us figure out who did. I can't. Can't or won't. Marcus's hands trembled on the table. You don't understand. These people, if they find out I talked, these people are going to prison, Price said flatly. The only question is whether you go with them or whether you cooperate, and maybe we can work something out. The public defender leaned over, whispered something in Marcus's ear. Marcus shook his head violently, then buried his face in his hands. Morgan watched him fall apart and felt nothing. No sympathy, no satisfaction, just cold calculation. How long has this been going on? She asked quietly. Marcus looked up, his eyes red. I don't know what you're... How long have you been taking money to look the other way? His face crumpled. 2 years? Maybe 3? I don't know exactly. What were you looking the other way from? Deliveries. Late night, usually. Vans would pull up to the loading dock. Guys would unload boxes, take them straight to the pharmacy. I was told it was medical supplies, legitimate stuff, just off hours because of scheduling issues. And you believe that? Marcus's laugh was bitter. I believe the $10,000 they deposited in my bank account every month. Price and Morgan exchanged looks. Who paid you? Price asked. I never met them. It was all done through intermediaries, text messages, cash drops, anonymous transfers. Marcus wiped his face with shaking hands. I swear I didn't know people were dying. I didn't know it was this big. I just thought... You thought you could take dirty money and pretend everything was fine, Morgan said. You thought no one would ever find out. I needed the money. Do you have any idea what it's like trying to survive on a security guard's salary in this city? My wife's medical bills, my kids' college tuition? Save it, Price said. Everyone's got problems. Most people don't solve them by helping drug dealers steal military pharmaceuticals. He closed the folder. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to write down every detail you remember. Every text message, every delivery, every person you interacted with, and then you're going to pray that cooperation buys you something better than 20 years in federal prison. Marcus nodded, defeated. As they left the interview room, Morgan's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should stop asking questions. She showed it to Price. Trace it, he said immediately, gesturing to a nearby tech agent. But Morgan already knew what they'd find. Another burner phone. Another dead end. Whoever was running this operation was watching, listening, staying 3 steps ahead. They took the elevator to the 7th floor where armed MPs still guarded Derek's room. Inside, nothing had changed. Derek lay motionless, his monitor beeping steadily, his face peaceful in unconsciousness. Morgan checked his vitals again, more from habit than necessity. Everything looked stable. Good. How long until we can move him? She asked. Price checked his phone. Federal facility is prepping a secure room now. Figure 8 hours, maybe 10. We'll do the transfer after midnight when there's less traffic. That's a long time to keep him here. I know, but moving him now in daylight, with local media already circling, too risky. We do this quiet, or we don't do it at all. Morgan understood the logic, but she didn't like it. 8 hours was an eternity when someone wanted you dead. One of the MPs, young, maybe 25, with corporal stripes and nervous eyes, cleared his throat. Ma'am, there's something you should know. Morgan turned. What? About an hour ago, someone tried to access this floor through the service elevator. Woman, maybe 50, wearing a maintenance uniform, said she was here to check the HVAC system. And we turned her away because she wasn't on the authorized list. But the thing is, she didn't seem surprised, didn't argue, just smiled and left. He hesitated. It felt like a test, like she was checking our response. Price cursed under his breath. Get me security footage from that elevator, now. While the MP radioed for the footage, Morgan walked to the window and looked out at the city beyond. Riverside sprawled in all directions, a mix of gleaming downtown towers and sprawling suburbs. Somewhere out there, people were living normal lives. Going to work, picking up kids from school, worrying about ordinary things, not running for their lives from a conspiracy that had already killed who knew how many people. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then something made her hit the green button. Morgan Reese, she said. Silence. Then a voice, male, electronically distorted. You should have stayed in your lane. Morgan's blood went cold. She gestured frantically to Price, who immediately started coordinating a trace. Who is this? She asked, keeping her voice steady. Someone who's trying to save your life. Walk away. Forget about Derek Vance. Forget about Riverside General. Go back to whatever hole you crawled out of, and you might survive this. Is that what you told Derek before you tried to kill him? A pause. Derek Vance was collateral damage. He stuck his nose where it didn't belong, just like you're doing now. The difference is, he's already dead. He just doesn't know it yet. He's alive. For now. But you can't watch him forever. Eventually you'll blink, and when you do, we'll be there. Morgan's grip tightened on the phone. You made a mistake going after him. No, the voice said. You made a mistake thinking you could stop this. Do you have any idea how big this operation is? How many people are involved? How much money flows through our network? The voice laughed, cold and mechanical. You're one woman, one burned-out combat medic playing hero. You don't have the resources, the connections, or the authority to touch us. Maybe not, Morgan said. But the federal government does. The federal government can be bought, just like hospital administrators, just like security guards, just like doctors who think they're untouchable. The voice hardened. Everyone has a price, Ms. Reese. What's yours? You can't afford it. Another laugh. We'll see. Check your bank account in about 10 minutes. You might be surprised. The line went dead. Price lowered his phone, frustrated. Not long enough to trace, but we got a general location somewhere within a 2-mile radius of the hospital. They're close, Morgan said. Yeah. Price looked at Derek's unconscious form. They're not going to give up, are they? No. Not until he's dead, or they are. Morgan's phone chimed. A notification from her banking app. She opened it, her stomach dropping. Someone had attempted to transfer $500,000 into her checking account. The transaction had been flagged as suspicious and automatically rejected by her bank's fraud detection. But the message was clear. They knew everything about her accounts, her information, her vulnerabilities. She showed Price. They're trying to buy you off, he said. They're showing me they can reach me anywhere. Morgan deleted the notification. Which means they've got access to serious resources. Banking systems, hospital records, government databases. This isn't some street-level drug operation. No, Price agreed grimly. It's not. Before either could say more, the MP returned with a tablet showing security footage. The woman in the maintenance uniform appeared on screen, walking confidently toward ICU 7's service elevator. When the MPs stopped her, she smiled. Not annoyed, not embarrassed, just smiled, and turned around. But as she walked away, she looked directly at the camera and mouthed something. Price rewound the footage, played it in slow motion. The woman's lips formed 2 words. He's dead. Morgan felt ice water run through her veins. That wasn't a test, she said. That was a promise. Price immediately got on his radio, ordering additional security, demanding building-wide lockdown protocols, calling for backup from Denver. But Morgan wasn't listening anymore. She was thinking about the distorted voice on the phone, the confidence in it, the certainty. Eventually, you'll blink, and when you do, we'll be there. Whoever was running this operation had resources Morgan couldn't match. Money, connections, people embedded throughout the hospital, and probably the city. They'd successfully stolen millions in pharmaceuticals, murdered an unknown number of people, and nearly killed a federal witness, twice. And now they were threatening her. The smart play would be to step back. Let the federal agents handle it. Trust the system. But Morgan had trusted the system before, overseas, and watched good people die because bureaucrats cared more about optics than outcomes. She wasn't doing that again. I need a favor, she said to Price. He looked up from his radio. What kind of favor? I need access to the hospital's complete personnel records. Every employee, every contractor, everyone who's worked here in the past 3 years. That's tens of thousands of files. I don't need to read them all. I need to find patterns. People who were hired around the same time this operation started. People with unexplained wealth. People with connections to pharmaceutical distribution or military supply chains. Price considered this. You think someone on staff is running this from inside the hospital? I think someone high up is coordinating everything. Someone with enough authority that they can move freely, give orders, and no one questions them. Morgan looked at Derek. Someone who knew exactly when he'd be vulnerable and exactly who to send to stop me from reaching him. You're talking about hospital administration. Maybe. Or someone close to them. Price was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. I'll get you the records. But Reese, be careful. If you're right, you're about to make some very powerful people very nervous. Good, Morgan said. Nervous people make mistakes. The next 6 hours blurred together. Morgan set up a makeshift workspace in an empty office near Derek's room, surrounded by stacks of personnel files and financial records that federal agents kept bringing her. She cross-referenced hiring dates, tracked unusual bank deposits, mapped relationships between employees. Patterns started to emerge. 7 people hired within a 3-month window 2 years ago. All of them placed in strategic positions: pharmacy, security, medical records. None of them with prior hospital experience. All of them with military backgrounds. Veterans, Morgan realized. They'd specifically recruited former military personnel because they knew how to follow orders, keep secrets, and most importantly, how to access military pharmaceutical supply chains. She found financial transfers, $50,000 here, $20,000 there, all carefully structured to avoid triggering federal reporting requirements. Vacation homes purchased in cash, cars bought outright, children's college tuitions paid in full. And at the center of it all, one name kept appearing: Dr. Vincent Kellerman, Chief of Staff at Riverside General Hospital for the past 4 years. Morgan pulled his file. 53, Harvard Medical School, 20 years in trauma surgery before moving into administration. Impeccable credentials, glowing recommendations, no red flags anywhere in his official record. But when she dug deeper into his personal finances, things got interesting. Kellerman owned a consulting company that supposedly advised pharmaceutical distributors on medical logistics. That company had received $3 million in payments over the past 2 years from a network of shell corporations. The same shell corporations that had paid Marcus Webb. The same ones that had purchased the burner phones. The same ones that were probably funding the entire operation. Morgan called Price over, showed him what she'd found. Son of a bitch, he breathed. The chief of staff. He's got the authority, the access, and the motivation. And look at this. Morgan pulled up another document. 6 months ago, Kellerman personally recommended Derek Vance be transferred to Riverside General for specialized cardiac care after his accident. He made sure Derek ended up exactly where he wanted him. Under his control. Or so he thought. Morgan's eyes were hard. Derek must have recognized something. Maybe a name in the files, maybe a procedure that didn't make sense. Something that made him realize the hospital treating him was part of the conspiracy he was investigating. Price was already on his phone, coordinating with his team. We need to bring Kellerman in now. He'll run. Not if we move fast. But even as Price gave orders, Morgan's instincts screamed that something was wrong. It was too clean, too obvious. Kellerman was smart. If he was really running this operation, would he leave such an easy trail? Unless the trail was intentional. Unless they wanted federal agents focused on Kellerman while the real architect stayed hidden. Her phone buzzed. Another text from an unknown number. Good work finding Kellerman. Too bad you're looking at the wrong person. Morgan's blood ran cold. Before she could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the hospital. Not the usual codes. Something else. Something worse. An MP burst into the office. We've got a situation. Main power just went down. Backup generators kicked in, but the lights flickered. Once, twice, then died completely. Emergency lighting activated, casting everything in eerie red. And in that moment, Morgan knew with absolute certainty that whoever was running this operation had just made their move. She grabbed her phone, using its flashlight as she ran toward Derek's room. Price followed, shouting into his radio, calling for backup that might not arrive in time. The ICU hallway stretched ahead, emergency lights creating pools of crimson and shadow. Derek's room was at the end. The door stood open. The MPs who'd been guarding it lay unconscious on the floor. And inside the room, standing over Derek's bed with a syringe in her hand, was Administrator Patricia Hammond. She looked up when Morgan entered and smiled. "Hello, Ms. Reese," she said calmly. "I was hoping you'd figure it out before it was too late. Makes this so much more satisfying." Morgan froze, every instinct screaming. "Step away from him." "Or what? You'll stop me?" Hammond's laugh was cold. "You're too late. You've been too late since the moment you walked into this hospital. The feds know everything. Kellerman, the shell companies, all of it. Kellerman is a useful idiot, just like Marcus Webb, just like everyone else in this building." Hammond raised the syringe. "The real power doesn't announce itself, Ms. Reese. It operates in shadows. And right now, those shadows are closing around you." Morgan took a step forward. Hammond pressed the needle against Derek's IV port. "One more step and he dies," she said softly. And in the red emergency lighting, with unconscious MPs on the floor and federal agents still trying to restore power, Morgan realized the truth she should have seen from the beginning. This had never been about drugs. It was about control. And she just walked right into their trap. Morgan's hands rose slowly, palms out, every movement deliberate. In Kandahar, she'd talked down a suicide bomber hopped up on amphetamines while mortar rounds fell 200 meters away. This should have felt familiar. It didn't. "You don't want to do this," Morgan said, her voice level. Hammond's smile widened. "Don't I? Because from where I'm standing, killing Derek Vance solves a lot of problems. It creates more. Does it?" Hammond kept the syringe pressed against the IV port, her thumb resting on the plunger. "Federal agents are currently swarming Kellerman's office. They're finding exactly what I wanted them to find: bank transfers, encrypted communications, evidence of a massive pharmaceutical theft ring. By the time power is restored, Vincent Kellerman will be in custody, and I'll be the concerned administrator who tried desperately to protect this hospital from his corruption." Morgan's mind raced. Behind her, she could hear Price shouting orders in the hallway, but he was dealing with unconscious MPs and a building-wide blackout. No help coming. Not fast enough. "The feds aren't stupid," Morgan said. "They'll see through this." "Will they? I've been cultivating my reputation for 4 years, spotless record, dedicated public servant. Everything I've done has been carefully documented, carefully witnessed. Hammond gestured with her free hand. Meanwhile, you're a military contractor with PTSD who assaulted hospital security on your first day. Who are they going to believe? I didn't assault anyone. Webb grabbed me. Your word against his. And Marcus is very motivated to cooperate now. Funny how people rewrite history when they're facing federal prison. The emergency lighting painted Hammond's face in shades of red and black, making her look like something out of a nightmare. But her hands were steady. Whatever else she wasn't panicking. How long have you been planning this? Morgan asked, buying time, waiting for an opening that might not come. Since the moment I realized the military pharmaceutical supply chain was essentially unguarded. Do you know how much morphine the VA orders every year? How much fentanyl? These drugs are supposed to help wounded veterans, but instead they sit in poorly managed storage facilities, shipped through outdated logistics networks, tracked by systems that haven't been updated since the 90s. Hammond's expression was almost wistful. It was so easy. A few strategic hires, some forged manifests, and suddenly millions of dollars in medication just disappeared. Nobody even noticed. Derek noticed. Derek got lucky. He was analyzing treatment delays at VA facilities when he stumbled across a pattern, medications ordered but never received, purchase orders that didn't match delivery receipts. If he'd been anyone else, we would have buried him in bureaucracy until he gave up. Hammond's smile faded. But Derek Vance doesn't give up. He kept digging, kept asking questions until he found paper trails connecting stolen VA medications to street dealers in 6 states, and to Riverside General. To several hospitals, actually. But yes, Riverside was a key distribution point. We had the infrastructure, the location, the cover of legitimacy. Hammond glanced at Derek's unconscious form. He built a case, gathered evidence, was about to go public when we arranged his little accident. Morgan's fingers twitched. She was maybe 8 feet away. If she moved fast, if Hammond hesitated even slightly, "Don't," Hammond said, reading her intention. "I will inject this before you reach me. Potassium chloride, concentrated. Chloride, concentrated. His heart will stop in seconds." Morgan froze. "That's better." Hammond relaxed slightly, which was a mistake. Relaxed people got sloppy. "You know what's funny? If Marcus had just let you through this morning, none of this would have happened. Derek would have died quietly, I would have expressed my deepest condolences, and the investigation would have stalled without his testimony. But you had to survive. Had to save him. Had to be the hero. Someone needed to be. Why? Look around, Ms. Reese. Look at this hospital, this system, this whole rotten infrastructure. Veterans dying in waiting rooms while administrators drive luxury cars. Nurses working double shifts for poverty wages while executives pocket million-dollar bonuses. The VA running out of basic medications while dealers sell them on street corners. Hammond's voice hardened. I didn't create this system. I just learned to profit from it. By stealing from people who already lost everything. By taking what was already being wasted. Hammond shook her head. You want to play moral arbiter? Fine. But don't pretend the system you're defending is any better than what I built. At least I'm honest about what I am. Behind Morgan, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Price, finally getting control of the situation. But he'd be too late. Hammond knew it. Morgan knew it. Morgan knew. Last chance, Hammond said. Walk away. Tell the feds you found Derek already dead when you arrived. We'll blame it on the power failure. Call it a tragic equipment malfunction. You go free, I go free, everyone wins. Except Derek. Derek's already gone. He just hasn't stopped breathing yet. Morgan's eyes flicked to the unconscious MPs on the floor. Both still breathing, which meant Hammond had used sedatives, not lethal force. Which meant maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as committed to murder as she pretended. You haven't killed anyone directly, Morgan said. The car accident was contractors. The medication tampering was Brennan. You've kept your hands clean this whole time. You really want to change that now? Hammond's thumb pressed slightly harder against the plunger. I've done what needed to be done. No. You've manipulated other people into doing it for you. That's different. That's cowardice. Shut up. You want to kill Derek? Fine. Do it. Push that plunger. But own it, Patricia. Look me in the eye and own what you are. Hammond's hand trembled, just slightly, just enough. Morgan moved, not toward Hammond, that's what she'd expect. Instead, Morgan dove sideways, grabbed one of the unconscious MP's service weapons, and rolled behind Derek's bed in one fluid motion. Hammond jerked backward, startled, the syringe pulling away from the IV port. Don't move, Morgan said, aiming the weapon with both hands. Hammond laughed, high and brittle. You won't shoot me. Not in a hospital room. Not with federal agents right outside. You sure about that? I've read your file, remember? 9 years as a combat medic. You've never fired a weapon in the field. Never killed anyone. Your whole career was about saving lives. Hammond's confidence returned. You're not a killer, Morgan. That's not who you are. Morgan's finger rested on the trigger guard. Proper discipline, proper form. You're right, I'm not a killer. Hammond smiled. But I don't need to kill you, Morgan continued. I just need to stop you. She fired. The bullet hit Hammond's right shoulder, exactly where Morgan aimed, the impact spinning Hammond around and sending the syringe flying across the room. Hammond screamed, clutching her shoulder as blood spread across her expensive blouse. Price burst through the door, weapon drawn, 3 agents behind him. Federal agents, get on the ground! Hammond dropped to her knees, still clutching her shoulder, her face twisted in pain and fury. She shot me! That crazy bitch shot me! Price kicked the fallen syringe away, then knelt beside Hammond, cuffing her hands behind her back despite her protests. Patricia Hammond, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and about 15 other charges we'll figure out on the way to processing. 2 agents moved to check the unconscious MPs while a third secured the room. Morgan lowered the weapon, her hands surprisingly steady. The gunshot still echoed in her ears. Cordite smell filled the air. You okay? Price asked, looking at her. Yeah. Morgan set the gun on Derek's bedside table, careful to keep it pointed away from everyone. Is he still stable? You got to her in time. Price hauled Hammond to her feet, ignoring her cursing. We need to get this floor locked down. If she cut the power, she had help. Building-wide blackout doesn't happen by accident, Morgan agreed. Someone in maintenance, probably. We're on it. Price nodded to his agents, who dragged Hammond toward the door. She was still screaming, claiming self-defense, claiming Morgan was unstable. Nobody was listening. After they left, Morgan stood alone in the red emergency lighting, staring at Derek's unconscious face. He had no idea how close he'd come. No idea his administrator had been standing over him with enough potassium chloride to stop his heart permanently. Her phone buzzed. Another text from an unknown number. Impressive. But Hammond was just middle management. The real players are still in motion. Morgan stared at the message, ice forming in her stomach. Then the emergency lights died completely. Pure darkness swallowed the ICU. Morgan's phone screen provided the only illumination, a tiny square of light in absolute black. She heard movement in the hallway. Not the heavy boots of federal agents. Something quieter. More deliberate. Morgan grabbed the MP's weapon again, flicked on the phone's flashlight, and moved to the doorway. The hallway was empty. Completely empty. The agents who'd been there 30 seconds ago, gone. The unconscious MPs, gone. Everything just vanished into darkness. Price? She called. No answer. Morgan's combat instincts screamed warnings. This was wrong. This was a kill box. This was exactly the kind of setup that got soldiers murdered in places like Helmand Province. She backed into Derek's room, closed the door, locked it. Then she pushed the bed away from the window, creating cover, and positioned herself between the door and Derek. Her phone buzzed again. You're alone now. No backup, no cavalry. Just you and choices. Morgan typed back. Who are you? The response came immediately. Someone who's been watching you since you arrived. Someone who knows exactly what you're capable of. What do you want? To see if you're as good as your files suggest. Hammond thought you were soft. I know better. Morgan's finger found the weapon's safety, flicked it off. Derek dies tonight, the text continued. Question is whether you die with him or walk away rich. Final offer? $2 million wired wherever you want. Or you stay, and we find out just how well you really fight in the dark. Morgan's hands tightened on the weapon. She'd been in firefights before, treated casualties under enemy fire, held pressure on sucking chest wounds while rockets screamed overhead. But this was different. This was surgical, planned. Someone with serious resources was systematically eliminating obstacles, and right now, she was an obstacle. The doorknob rattled, someone testing it, finding it locked. Then silence. Morgan counted seconds in her head, got to 30 before the first gunshot blew the door lock apart. She fired back through the door, 3 controlled shots, then dove behind Derek's bed as return fire punched through the walls. Drywall exploded, glass shattered. Derek's monitor sparked and died. Morgan checked him quickly, still breathing, still unconscious, no apparent hits. Good. She blind fired twice more, buying time, her ears ringing from the enclosed space. Then the shooting stopped. Voice from the hallway, male, calm. Ms. Reese, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Morgan said nothing. Let them wonder. We've got the building surrounded. Federal agents are being detained on the first floor. Local police have been told there's a gas leak, whole blocks being evacuated. Nobody's coming to help you. Still, Morgan stayed silent, controlling her breathing, listening. But here's the thing, we don't actually want to kill you. You're not worth the heat. So here's the deal. You walk out of that room right now, hands up, and we let you live. You get the $2 million we offered, plus a plane ticket anywhere you want to go. 24 hours from now, you're on a beach somewhere. This is all just a bad memory. Morgan positioned herself at an angle where she could see the doorway without exposing herself. Professional stance. Combat ready. What happens to Derek? She asked. Derek's already gone. We injected him with a slow-acting cardiac depressant about 5 minutes ago. Hospital staff will find him dead in the morning, just another tragic complication from his injuries. Morgan glanced at Derek's IV. Someone had been in here. While she was distracted with Hammond, while everyone was focused on the obvious threat, she checked his pulse. Faint. Weakening. You're lying, she said. Check his chart. Check his medication logs. By morning, it'll all show natural causes. Nobody to blame, nothing to investigate. Morgan's mind raced through possibilities. If they'd really dosed him, she had maybe 10 minutes before cardiac arrest. But treating him meant exposing herself, meant taking her attention off the door. Classic tactical dilemma. Save the casualty or secure the position. Choose wrong, and everyone dies. Clock's ticking, Ms. Reese. What's it going to be? Morgan made her decision. She fired 4 shots through the doorway. High, low, center mass, then sprinted to Derek's side. Her fingers found his carotid. Pulse definitely weakening. Respiration shallow. She grabbed what was left of the IV setup, checked the line. Someone had injected something directly into the drip chamber. Smart. Wouldn't show up on initial talk screens. The door burst open. 2 men in tactical gear swept in, weapons raised. Morgan shot the first one center mass. He went down hard. The second one got off 2 rounds before Morgan's bullet caught him in the throat. He collapsed, choking. She didn't wait to see if they stayed down. Just grabbed Derek's bed and started rolling it toward the door, one hand on the frame, one hand holding the weapon. Hallway clear, emergency exit 20 meters away. She ran. Behind her, more footsteps, more voices. She fired backward without looking, just suppression fire, keeping them cautious. The emergency exit door was chained shut. Son of a bitch, Morgan breathed. She spun, putting her back to the wall, Derek's bed beside her. 3 men appeared at the far end of the hallway, backlit by emergency lighting that had suddenly flickered back to life. Nowhere to go, one of them called. Morgan checked her magazine. 4 rounds left. Derek's breathing was getting worse. She could hear the rattle in his chest, the way his body was starting to shut down. 4 rounds, 3 hostiles, and somewhere in this building, whoever was really running this operation was watching, waiting to see what she'd do. Morgan aimed at the lead hostile. Last chance. Walk away. They laughed. Then gunfire erupted from behind them. The 3 men went down in seconds, professional double taps from multiple shooters. Morgan's finger tensed on her own trigger before she saw who was shooting. Military police. A whole squad of them, sweeping the hallway with tactical precision. And leading them was a woman Morgan had never seen before. Late 40s, gray hair, Army Colonel insignia. Ms. Reese, the Colonel said crisply. Colonel Sandra Vega, Defense Intelligence. We need to move. Now. Derek's been poisoned. He needs... Already called it in. Medical team's on the way. Vega gestured to 2 MPs who immediately took control of Derek's bed. But we need to get you both out of this building. The people who want you dead have resources we're still mapping. Morgan followed them down the hallway, past unconscious federal agents, drugged, not dead, thank God, and into a service elevator that the MPs had secured. What about Price? Morgan asked. Agent Price is fine, sedated like the others, but fine. Vega pressed the button for the basement level. His team got hit with aerosolized benzodiazepines pumped through the HVAC system, knocked out everyone on floors 6 through 8 within minutes. How did you... We've been watching this operation for 6 months, ever since Derek first reported the discrepancies. You think we sent him to Riverside General by accident? Vega's smile was cold. We wanted to see who'd take the bait. Morgan's exhaustion was catching up to her. You used him. We gave him a chance to expose corruption that's been killing veterans for years. And he took it, knowingly, willingly. Vega glanced at Derek's unconscious form. What we didn't anticipate was how deep this went, or how far they'd go to protect it. The elevator reached the basement. Doors opened to reveal an underground parking structure filled with military vehicles. They loaded Derek into an armored ambulance. A combat medic immediately started working on him. IV access, cardiac monitors, medications Morgan couldn't identify. "Is he going to make it?" Morgan asked. The medic didn't look up. "Don't know yet. Depends on what they gave him." Vega pulled Morgan aside. "We need to debrief you. Everything that happened today, everything Hammond said, everything you found in those personnel files. Hammond said she was middle management, that the real players are still out there." "She's right." Vega's expression was grim. "This operation spans multiple states, multiple hospitals, and involves people at the highest levels of both civilian and military medical infrastructure. Hammond was just one piece." "How big are we talking?" "Big enough that taking it down is going to require coordination between the DOJ, Department of Defense, Veterans Affairs, and probably Homeland Security." Vega checked her watch. "Big enough that people are going to die trying to keep it hidden." Morgan thought about the texts, the phone calls, the casual confidence of whoever was pulling Hammond's strings. "They knew I was coming," she said. "They knew exactly when I'd arrive, where I'd go, what I'd do. Someone fed them my entire assignment." "We're working on that, but yes, we have a leak, somewhere high up in the command structure." Vega's jaw tightened, which is why what happens next is classified. As far as the public knows, Patricia Hammond acted alone, stealing medications to fund a gambling addiction. Derek Vance is a patient who had complications. You're a travel nurse who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. You're burying it. We're controlling the narrative until we can identify everyone involved. If word gets out that we're running a federal investigation into military pharmaceutical corruption, people will scatter. Evidence will disappear. Witnesses will die. Vega met Morgan's eyes. "I know you want justice. So do I. But sometimes justice requires patience." Morgan wanted to argue, wanted to demand immediate action, immediate consequences. But she'd been in this military long enough to understand operational security. Sometimes the long game was the only game that worked. "Fine," she said. "What do you need from me?" "Keep doing what you're doing. Stay assigned to Derek. When he wakes up, he's going to need protection from people who think this is over." Vega handed her a phone, encrypted, military grade. "You report directly to me from now on. No one else. Trust no one else." Morgan pocketed the phone. "What about the people who attacked us tonight?" "Dead or detained. We're processing them now." Vega glanced at the ambulance where medics were still working frantically on Derek. "But they were contractors, hired guns. They can't tell us who paid them because they don't know. Everything was done through intermediaries. Professional setup. Very professional. Whoever's running this has serious training and serious paranoia." Vega's radio crackled. She listened, then cursed softly. "We've got a situation." "What kind of situation?" "Dr. Richard Brennan just turned up. Someone dumped his body in a parking lot 3 blocks from here. Single gunshot to the head. Execution style." Morgan's stomach dropped. "They're cleaning house. Fast. Which means they're scared. Which means we're close to something they desperately want to protect." Vega turned to her MPs. "I want this building locked down. No one in, no one out. And someone find me Vincent Kellerman. If Hammond was middle management and Brennan's dead, Kellerman might be next." But Morgan was thinking about something else. Something Hammond had said. Something about the real power operating in shadows. "It's not Kellerman," she said suddenly. Vega turned. "What?" "Kellerman's too obvious. Hammond basically handed him to us. The financial records, the shell companies, it was all too easy to find." "You think he's another fall guy?" "I think whoever's really running this is smart enough to have multiple layers of protection. Hammond was layer 1. Kellerman's layer 2. But somewhere above them..." Morgan's encrypted phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that somehow had this brand new device's contact information. "Very impressive tonight. You're everything we hoped you'd be. We'll be in touch soon." "And Ms. Reese? Welcome to the real game." Morgan showed Vega. The colonel's face went pale. "How did they get this number? This phone's been active for less than 5 minutes." "Because they're inside your operation." Morgan's voice was flat. "Inside the DoD. Inside Defense Intelligence. Inside everything." Before Vega could respond, the combat medic working on Derek shouted, He's coding! I need help now! Morgan ran to the ambulance. Derek's monitor showed ventricular fibrillation, his heart spasming uselessly, unable to pump blood. The medic was already charging the defibrillator. Clear! Derek's body arched as electricity coursed through him. No change. Again, clear. Another shock. Another terrible arch. The monitor showed a systole, flatline. No, Morgan breathed. No, come on. The medic started chest compressions, counting under her breath. Another medic pushed medications through Derek's IV. Epinephrine, atropine, desperate measures for a desperate situation. Morgan's hands moved on autopilot, checking airway, helping ventilate, doing what she'd done 100 times in worse conditions. But this time felt different. This time felt final. They worked for 4 minutes, 6 minutes, 8. Vega stood nearby, her expression unreadable. How long can you keep going? As long as it takes, Morgan said through gritted teeth, still doing compressions. But she knew the statistics. After 10 minutes without perfusion, brain damage became likely. After 15, almost certain. Derek's monitor stayed flat. 12 minutes. 13. The medic looked at Morgan. We're not getting him back. Keep going. Morgan, I said keep going. They pushed more medications, more shocks, more compressions that Morgan knew were probably just bruising dead tissue. 15 minutes. Vega stepped forward. That's enough. No. Ms. Reese, I said no. Morgan's voice cracked. He doesn't die. Not after everything. Not like this. But Derek's monitor didn't care about Morgan's determination. It just kept showing that terrible flat line, the visual representation of a heart that had stopped fighting. 16 minutes. The medic gently pulled Morgan back. He's gone. I'm sorry. Morgan stood there, breathing hard, her hands covered in Derek's blood from the IV she'd tried to restart. Around her, military personnel started packing up equipment, documenting time of death, following protocols. Derek Vance, the Army intelligence analyst who discovered a multi-state pharmaceutical trafficking conspiracy, was dead at 26. And whoever killed him was still out there. Morgan walked away from the ambulance, away from the medics, away from Colonel Vega's sympathetic expression. She stood in the shadows of the parking garage, her back against cold concrete. Her encrypted phone buzzed one more time. Don't take it personally. He was always going to die. The question was never whether we'd kill him. It was whether you'd realize the truth before we killed you too. Morgan stared at the message, something cold and terrible crystallizing in her chest. Then she noticed something. The text formatting was identical to messages she'd received earlier. Same syntax patterns, same casual confidence. She scrolled back through the conversation, looking for patterns, looking for anything. And there it was. One message sent at 6:47 a.m., the exact moment she'd been on the phone with Agent Price, who'd been standing 10 feet away at the nurses' station. She pulled up the hospital personnel files still saved on her personal phone, started cross-referencing names, positions, access levels, found what she was looking for. Vega appeared beside her. Reese, we need to talk about... You have a satellite office in Denver, Morgan interrupted. What? Defense Intelligence. You have a satellite office in Denver. Who runs it? Vega frowned. Lieutenant Colonel James Hardwick. Why? Morgan pulled up Hardwick's file. Former Army Intelligence. 22 years of service. Currently assigned to Defense Intelligence liaison duties with VA medical oversight. The same department that had reviewed Derek's initial findings. The same department that had approved his transfer to Riverside General. The same department that had full access to federal witness protection protocols. When did Hardwick take that position? Morgan asked. About 3 years ago, right after he retired from active duty. Vega's expression shifted. What are you thinking? Morgan showed her the timeline she'd built. The pharmaceutical theft started 30 months ago. Hardwick took his position 32 months ago. He's been in a perfect position to monitor investigations, redirect resources, and make sure anyone who got too close ended up somewhere convenient. Like Riverside General. Like Riverside General. Morgan's voice was hard. He's your leak, Colonel. And if I had to guess, he's not just a leak. He's running the entire operation. Vega's hand moved to her sidearm. That's a serious accusation. Can you reach him right now? He's supposed to be in Denver. Vega pulled out her phone, made a call. Waited. No answer. She tried another number, then another. Finally, someone picked up. Morgan could hear a young voice on the other end. Colonel Vega? Ma'am, Lieutenant Colonel Hardwick left the office about 3 hours ago. Said he had a family emergency. Vega's expression went cold. What time exactly? Around 1900 hours. Right after Hammond had been arrested. Right after the shooting at Riverside General. Right when someone smart would realize their operation was collapsing. Vega ended the call. I need to make some calls. If you're right, I'm right. Then we've got a bigger problem than I thought. Vega turned to her MPs. I want a full alert. Find Lieutenant Colonel James Hardwick. Consider him armed and dangerous. But Morgan was staring at her phone again, at the last message from the unknown number. The question was never whether we'd kill him. It was whether you'd realize the truth before we killed you too. She looked at Derek's body bag being loaded into the ambulance. Then she looked at Colonel Vega, surrounded by military police who all reported through a chain of command that Hardwick had access to. And Morgan realized with absolute clarity that she was standing in a parking garage with people who might not all be on her side. Her hand drifted toward the weapon still tucked in her waistband. Vega noticed. Reese, don't. How do I know you're not part of this? Because if I was, you'd already be dead. Vega's voice was steady. I've been investigating Hardwick for 2 months, ever since discrepancies started appearing in federal witness protection protocols. I just couldn't prove anything until tonight. Convenient story. It's the truth. Vega slowly raised her hands, showing she wasn't reaching for her weapon. You want proof? Fine. Check the encrypted message logs on that phone I gave you. It's connected to a secure DoD server that Hardwick doesn't have access to. If I was compromised, I wouldn't have given you a communication method he can't monitor. Morgan hesitated, then checked the phone's security settings. Military-grade encryption, routing through channels that required biometric authentication. Vega was right. If she'd wanted Morgan dead, there were easier ways. Morgan lowered her hand from the weapon. Sorry. Don't be. Paranoia's kept you alive this long. Vega's expression softened slightly. But we need to work together now. Hardwick's in the wind, Hammond's in custody but lawyered up, and we've got a pharmaceutical trafficking network that spans half the country. You're the only person who's seen the full picture from inside Riverside General. Derek saw more. Derek's gone. Vega's voice was gentle. Which means you're our best witness now, and that makes you the next target. Morgan looked at the ambulance, at Derek's body, at the wasted potential in Silent's testimony. What do you need me to do? Testify. When we bring this case to trial, we'll need someone who can connect Hammond to the conspiracy, who can explain how the operation worked inside the hospital, who can make a jury understand what these people did. If you catch them, we'll catch them. Vega's certainty was absolute. Hardwick doesn't know we're onto him yet. He thinks Hammond was acting alone, thinks the investigation stops with her. We're going to let him think that while we build a case. And in the meantime, you disappear. Federal protection, new identity, the works. Vega gestured to the waiting vehicles. We'll move you somewhere safe until the trial. Morgan thought about running, about hiding, about letting someone else fight this battle. Then she thought about Derek, who'd refused to back down even when people tried to kill him. No, she said. Vega blinked. Excuse me? I'm not hiding. I'm not running. If Hardwick thinks this is over, let him think that. But I'm staying visible. I'm staying at Riverside General. Morgan's voice was steel. Because someone needs to protect the next person who tries to blow the whistle. And someone needs to make sure Hammond's arrest actually means something. That's suicide. Maybe. Or maybe Hardwick makes a mistake trying to clean up loose ends, and we catch him. Morgan met Vega's eyes. You said you need a witness. Fine. But I need a purpose. And right now my purpose is making sure Derek didn't die for nothing. Vega studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. But you follow my protocols. You report in every 6 hours. You take no unnecessary risks. Define unnecessary. Reese, I'll be careful, but I won't be helpless. Morgan started walking toward the exit. And Colonel, when you find Hardwick, make sure he knows I'm the one who figured him out. Make sure he knows I'm waiting. Behind her, Vega called out, You're going to get yourself killed. Morgan didn't turn around. People keep saying that. I'm still here. She emerged from the parking garage into a cold night. Police lights still flashed on the periphery. Media vans crowded the hospital entrance. The whole world thought they'd witnessed a simple case of hospital corruption. Morgan knew better. She pulled out her encrypted phone and sent a message to the unknown number that had been taunting her all night. I know who you are, Hardwick, and I'm coming for you. The response came 30 seconds later. Prove it. If you're so sure, come to Denver, Suite 1847 at the Riverside Hotel downtown. Midnight tomorrow. Come alone or don't come at all. Let's see if you're really as dangerous as everyone seems to think. Morgan stared at the message. It was obviously a trap, obviously a setup designed to get her isolated and vulnerable, obviously the kind of stupid decision that got people killed. She typed back, "See you there." Then she walked into the night, alone, and started planning how to survive a meeting with a man who'd killed dozens of people and destroyed countless lives, all while wearing a military uniform and hiding behind classified clearances. Somewhere in the darkness, sirens wailed. Derek's body was being transported to a morgue. Hammond was in federal custody, and Morgan Reese was about to walk into the most dangerous meeting of her life. Because sometimes the only way to win was to let your enemy think they'd already beaten you, right up until the moment you proved them wrong. Morgan spent the next 20 hours preparing to die. Not dramatically, not with grand speeches or farewell letters, just methodically, the way she'd been trained in a dozen classified briefings about operating in hostile territory. She bought a burner phone from a gas station in Aurora, transferred encrypted files to 3 separate cloud servers with dead man switches, wrote down everything she knew about the conspiracy in plain text, and mailed copies to 5 different journalists whose names she pulled from investigative reporting awards. If Hardwick killed her in that hotel room, the whole operation would explode into public view within 72 hours. Insurance, of a sort. She also bought a gun. Glock 19, purchased legally from a sporting goods store with her military ID and a background check that took exactly 15 minutes. Hollow points from the same place. She spent 3 hours at a shooting range outside Denver, putting 500 rounds through the weapon until her hands ached and every shot landed center mass. Then she went to the hotel. The Riverside Hotel downtown was exactly the kind of place where people conducted business they didn't want recorded. Expensive enough to discourage budget travelers, anonymous enough that wealthy guests could come and go without attracting attention. Morgan walked through the lobby at 11:45, past the board concierge, into an elevator that smelled like expensive cologne and quiet desperation. 18th floor. Suite 1847. She checked her weapon one more time, loaded, safety off, round-chambered, then knocked. The door opened immediately. Lieutenant Colonel James Hardwick looked nothing like his official photos. Those showed a stern man in dress uniform, jaw squared, eyes forward, every inch the dedicated officer. The person standing in the doorway looked like someone who'd stopped sleeping 3 days ago and couldn't remember why. His civilian clothes hung loose. His face was unshaven. His eyes carried the kind of exhaustion that came from watching everything you'd built collapse in real time. "Ms. Reese," he said, "you actually came. You sound surprised." "I am, a little. Most people have better survival instincts." He stepped back, gesturing her inside. "Please." Morgan entered carefully, scanning the suite. Standard hotel layout, living area, bedroom visible through an open door, bathroom to the left. No obvious weapons, no visible backup. Just Hardwick and a bottle of expensive scotch sitting on the coffee table, half empty. "Drinking alone?" Morgan asked. "Celebrating. Or mourning. I haven't decided which." Hardwick closed the door but didn't lock it. "You want some?" "It's Macallan 18. Costs more than most people make in a week." "I'm good." "Suit yourself." He poured another glass, drained it in one swallow. "So, you figured it out. I'm impressed." "Don't be. You got sloppy." "Did I?" Hardwick's smile was bitter. "Or did I want you to figure it out? Ever consider that possibility?" Morgan's hand stayed near her weapon. "Why would you want that?" "Because I'm tired, Ms. Reese. Tired of watching corrupt systems protect corrupt people. Tired of running an operation that was supposed to expose institutional rot, but instead just became more rot." He gestured vaguely at the window, at the city beyond. "Do you know how many veterans died waiting for medications that never arrived? How many people overdosed on drugs stolen from VA shipments? How many families were destroyed while administrators got rich? So you became part of the problem. I became the problem." Hardwick poured another drink but didn't consume it, just stared at the amber liquid like it held answers. 3 years ago, I was assigned to investigate pharmaceutical irregularities in the VA system. Standard oversight. Should have been routine, but what I found... He shook his head. The corruption went everywhere. Hospital administrators, military logistics, civilian contractors, everyone taking their cut while veterans suffered. And instead of reporting it, you decided to profit. I decided to build evidence, real evidence, the kind that would actually stick in court. Hardwick's voice hardened. You can't bring down a conspiracy this size with some auditor's report and a PowerPoint presentation. You need names, transactions, recorded conversations. You need to infiltrate the network. Morgan studied him. You're saying you went undercover. I'm saying I did what needed to be done. I joined them, became their military liaison, helped coordinate shipments, launder money, recruit personnel. And the whole time, I documented everything, built a case that would destroy everyone involved. Including yourself, including myself. Hardwick finally drank the scotch he'd poured. I knew from the beginning that when this went public, I'd go down with everyone else. I just didn't care. Because bringing down a network that's killed hundreds of veterans seemed worth sacrificing one career, worth sacrificing one life. Morgan wanted to believe him, wanted to think that somewhere in this mess was someone actually trying to do the right thing. But she'd seen too much, lost too much. Derek's dead, she said flatly. Hardwick's expression cracked. I know. You got him killed. Yes. And now you want me to believe you're the hero? That this was all some elaborate sting operation? Morgan's laugh was harsh. I've heard better lies from Taliban informants. I don't expect you to believe me. I expect you to look at the evidence. Hardwick pulled a laptop from beneath the couch, opened it, turned it toward Morgan. 3 years of documentation. Every transaction, every conversation, every person involved. Names going all the way up to Pentagon procurement and VA administration. Morgan glanced at the screen. Spreadsheets, audio files, video recordings. If it was real, why show me this now? She asked. Because Hammond broke. About 6 hours ago, she started talking to federal prosecutors, trying to make a deal, reduce her sentence, all the usual playbook. And the first thing she did was point at me. Hardwick's smile was grim. She's claiming I ran the whole operation, that she was just following orders, that every crime was actually my idea. Was it? Some of it, yeah, but not the way she's claiming. I gave her enough rope to hang herself, and she's trying to use that rope to hang me instead. He closed the laptop. Which is fine, expected even. But the problem is if I go down alone, the people above me, the Pentagon officials, the VA administrators, the civilian executives, they all walk away clean. Hammond points at me. I take the fall, and the whole network just reorganizes under new leadership. Morgan processed that. So you need someone who can corroborate your story. Someone who saw the operation from inside Riverside General. Someone federal prosecutors will actually believe. I need you. Why should I help you? Derek trusted the system, and the system got him killed. Derek trusted me, Hardwick said quietly. I recruited him, told him we were building a case together, promised him protection. His voice cracked. And then I sent him into Riverside General knowing Hammond would panic, knowing she'd try to kill him. Because I needed her to make a move, needed her to expose herself, needed evidence that would force federal intervention. Morgan's hand found her weapon. You used him as bait. Yes. You murdered him. Yes. Hardwick didn't try to defend himself. Didn't make excuses. I thought I could control it, thought I could protect him while still forcing Hammond's hand. I was wrong. Morgan drew the Glock, aimed it at his chest. Give me one reason I shouldn't kill you right now. Because then the people who are really responsible go free. Because Derek's death meant nothing. Because you'd be doing exactly what they want, eliminating the one person who has proof of how deep this goes. Hardwick met her eyes. Kill me if you want. I probably deserve it. But at least look at the evidence first. At least see what Derek died trying to expose. Morgan's finger rested on the trigger. 2 pounds of pressure. That's all it would take. 2 pounds, and James Hardwick would join Derek in whatever came after. She lowered the weapon. Show me, she said. For the next 3 hours, Hardwick walked her through everything. The laptop contained a horrifying portrait of systematic corruption. VA officials approving fraudulent medication orders, Pentagon procurement officers accepting bribes, hospital administrators across 6 states participating in what amounted to the largest pharmaceutical theft in American history. And at the center of it all, one name kept appearing. Senator Malcolm Torrens, chairman of the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee. Torrens? Morgan looked up from the screen. The guy who's always on TV talking about supporting veterans? The same. Hardwick pulled up a video file. Watch this. The footage showed Senator Torrens in what looked like a private office, talking to someone off camera. The timestamp was dated 6 months ago. Don't care how you do it, Torrens was saying, but we need those VA medication contracts flowing through approved channels. My approved channels. The campaign needs funding, and these pharmaceutical distributions, are the cleanest money we have. The off-camera voice responded. What about the veterans who actually need these medications? Torrens laughed. They'll get what we give them. Most of them are too broken to complain anyway. And the ones who do complain? We bury them in bureaucracy until they give up or die. Either way, problem solved. Morgan felt sick. You recorded a sitting senator. I recorded a criminal who happens to be a senator. Hardwick closed the video. Torrens has been using his committee position to redirect VA pharmaceutical contracts to companies he secretly owns. Those companies then lose shipments, which get sold on the black market. The profits fund his political campaigns and personal accounts. He's stolen an estimated $40 million over the past 5 years. And nobody noticed? People noticed. They just died before they could do anything about it. Hardwick pulled up another file, a list of names. 12 whistleblowers over 4 years, all of them dead. Car accidents, suicides, sudden medical complications, all ruled accidental or natural causes. Morgan recognized one name on the list. Captain Jennifer Walsh, Army Medical Logistics, died in a car accident 18 months ago. I knew her, Morgan said quietly. We served together in Kandahar. She was solid, careful, not the type to have accidents. She found evidence linking Torrens to the theft network, was about to go public, died 3 days later when her brakes failed. Hardwick's expression was haunted. I couldn't save her, couldn't save any of them. But I could document it, build a case so airtight that when it finally went public, not even a senator could escape. Why not just release this yourself? Why involve Derek, Hammond, me? Because I needed witnesses, real people with credible stories and no connection to me. If I just dumped these files online, Torrens would claim they're fabricated, deepfakes, conspiracy theories. Hardwick met her eyes. But if federal prosecutors have testimony from hospital staff, medical personnel, security guards, people who saw the operation from inside, who can verify the documents, then it becomes real. Then it becomes prosecutable. Morgan's encrypted phone buzzed. A text from Colonel Vega. Where are you? We've been trying to reach you for 6 hours. She typed back. With Hardwick. He's showing me evidence. It's bigger than we thought. Vega's response came immediately. Get out of there now. Hardwick is armed and dangerous. We have warrants for his arrest. Morgan showed Hardwick the message. He nodded slowly. They got to Vega. Probably threatened her career, promised promotions, whatever it takes. Torrens has people everywhere. Or you're lying and Vega's trying to save my life. Maybe. But ask yourself, if I wanted you dead, why show you all this? Why not just shoot you when you walk through the door? It was a fair point. Morgan looked at the laptop, at the files that represented 3 years of work, hundreds of hours of risk, evidence that could bring down some of the most powerful people in the country. What do you want me to do? She asked. Testify. When this goes to trial, federal prosecutors will need someone who can explain how the operation worked at Riverside General, how medications were stolen, how witnesses were intimidated, how the whole system protected itself. Hardwick's voice was urgent. You're the only person who's seen enough to make the case stick. What about you? I'll testify too. Tell them everything. Take responsibility for my part. He smiled bitterly. I'll spend the rest of my life in federal prison. But if it means Torrens and everyone else goes down with me, it's worth it. Morgan's phone buzzed again. This time, a call from Vega. She answered. Colonel? Reese, listen to me very carefully. Vega's voice was strained. Hardwick is not who you think he is. He's not some undercover hero. He's a sociopath who's been running this operation from the beginning. Everything he's showing you is fabricated. Everything he's telling you is a lie designed to make himself look like the victim. How do you know? Because we just found his real files, the ones he kept hidden. Financial records showing millions in offshore accounts. Communications proving he ordered Derek's murder. Video of him personally executing Dr. Brennan. Vega's voice cracked. He played us all. And now he's trying to play you. Morgan looked at Hardwick, who was watching her calmly. Put him on speaker, Hardwick said. Morgan did. Hello, Colonel, Hardwick said. Found my insurance files, did you? You son of a bitch. You murdered 12 people. 14, actually. You missed a couple. But yes, I did what needed to be done to maintain my cover, to build a case that would actually matter. Hardwick's voice was steady. Do you think those people wanted to die? Do you think I enjoyed it? Every single death haunts me. But the alternative was letting a network that's killed hundreds of veterans continue operating indefinitely. That's not how justice works, isn't it? How many drone strikes have you authorized, Colonel? How many missions where the math said acceptable casualties were acceptable? Don't pretend you're unfamiliar with sacrificing a few to save many. Vega was silent. The difference, Hardwick continued, is that I'm willing to face consequences for my choices. I'm not hiding behind classified clearances or national security justifications. I documented my crimes. I'm handing prosecutors everything they need to convict me. All I ask is that they also convict everyone else. You're insane, Vega said. I'm practical. There's a difference. Hardwick looked at Morgan. She's going to tell you to leave, to let federal agents handle this. And maybe you should. Maybe I am exactly the monster she thinks I am. But before you decide, ask yourself one question. If what I'm showing you is fake, why is Senator Torrens currently on a private plane to a country without extradition treaties? Morgan's head snapped up. What? Hardwick pulled up a flight tracking app on his laptop. Sure enough, a private jet registered to a shell company was currently over the Atlantic, heading toward Brazil. Torrens found out Hammond's talking, found out federal prosecutors are looking at VA pharmaceutical contracts, and instead of staying to proclaim his innocence, he ran. Hardwick's smile was cold. Innocent people don't run, Colonel. They lawyer up and fight. Guilty people run. Vega cursed. How do you know about that flight? Because I've been tracking Torrens for 3 years. I know his shell companies, his offshore accounts, his escape plans. I know everything. Hardwick's expression hardened. And I handed all of it to the FBI 6 hours ago. They're currently coordinating with Brazilian authorities to have him arrested the moment he lands. Morgan heard urgent voices in the background of Vega's call. Someone shouting orders. Radios crackling. Is that true? Morgan asked Vega. A long pause. Then, we just got confirmation. FBI has evidence of Torrens' involvement. Warrants are being issued now. Vega sounded exhausted. Hardwick did give us files, but that doesn't make him innocent. It just makes him a criminal who's willing to rat out bigger criminals. Exactly, Hardwick said. I'm a criminal. I'm guilty. I deserve whatever punishment I get, but I'm a criminal who's handing you a senator, 3 Pentagon officials, 6 VA administrators, and 14 hospital executives. That's the deal. Take it or leave it. Vega was quiet for a long moment. Where are you? Morgan looked at Hardwick, who nodded. Riverside Hotel downtown, Morgan said. Suite 1847. Federal agents are 10 minutes out. Hardwick, if you're smart, you'll surrender peacefully. Always planned to, Colonel. Hardwick stood, raised his hands. Ms. Reese has her weapon. I'm unarmed. Tell your people not to shoot. The call ended. Morgan kept her Glock trained on Hardwick. Did you really kill Derek? Yes. Why? Because Hammond panicked. Sent someone to inject him with a cardiac depressant that I didn't know about, didn't authorize. By the time I found out, he was already dying. Hardwick's voice was hollow. I could have called for help, could have had medical personnel standing by. But I made a choice. If Derek survived, Hammond might not be desperate enough to expose herself. Might retreat, regroup, find another way to protect the operation. But if Derek died, if she felt cornered, she'd make mistakes. She'd make mistakes. Hardwick looked at his hands. So I let him die. Watched his heart stop. Watched medics try to save him. And when it was over, I documented everything as evidence. Morgan's finger tensed on the trigger. You're a monster. Yes, but I'm a monster who's about to bring down a network that's killed hundreds of people and stolen millions from veterans who already gave everything. Hardwick met her eyes. Does that make it right? No. Does it make it necessary? I honestly don't know anymore. They stood in silence, Morgan's weapon aimed at Hardwick's chest, waiting for federal agents who would decide both their fates. Answer me one thing, Morgan said. Did you always plan to turn yourself in, or did you only decide to cooperate after you knew you were caught? Hardwick considered the question. Both. I always knew this would end with me in custody, but I thought I'd have more time, thought I could build an even stronger case, catch even more people. He smiled bitterly. Then Hammond got arrested, you figured out who I was, and suddenly my timeline accelerated. So yes, I'm cooperating because I'm caught, but I would have cooperated eventually anyway. That was always the plan. I don't believe you. I don't need you to believe me. I need you to testify about what you saw at Riverside General. I need you to tell prosecutors how Hammond operated, how medications were stolen, how the whole system worked. Hardwick's voice was urgent. Because if you don't, if you refuse to get involved, some of these people will walk. Maybe not Torrens. We've got him cold. But the hospital executives, the VA administrators, the mid-level people who did the actual work, They'll claim ignorance. They'll claim they were just following orders. And prosecutors will let them plead down to minor charges because they need convictions, and minor convictions are better than none. Morgan heard sirens approaching. Federal vehicles were probably surrounding the building right now, tactical teams moving into position. "If I testify," she said slowly, "I'm admitting I was part of this, that I knew what was happening and didn't stop it sooner. You weren't part of it. You exposed it. I shot Hammond in a hospital room. That's going to look bad in court. You shot Hammond to prevent a murder. That's self-defense, defense of others, completely justified." Hardwick's expression was earnest. "Reese, you're not the bad guy here. You're the one person in this entire mess who actually tried to do the right thing without ulterior motives. Prosecutors will love you. Will they? Or will they see a burned-out combat medic with PTSD who shot a hospital administrator and is now trying to justify it by claiming conspiracy?" Hardwick opened his mouth, closed it. "That's actually a fair concern." "Yeah. But you've got Colonel Vega backing you up. Agent Price's testimony. The MPs who saw Hammond with the syringe. The security footage from this morning showing Marcus Webb assaulting you." Hardwick counted on his fingers. "You've got documentation, witnesses, physical evidence. You're fine." Morgan wished she shared his confidence. Heavy footsteps in this hallway, radios crackling. Then a voice over a megaphone. "Lieutenant Colonel James Hardwick, this is the FBI. Come out with your hands visible." Hardwick looked at Morgan. "Last chance. You with me or not?" Morgan thought about Derek, about Jennifer Walsh, about all the veterans who died waiting for medications that never came. "I'm with justice," she said, "whether that includes you or not." "Fair enough." Hardwick walked to the door, hands raised. "I'm coming out. I'm unarmed. There's one other person inside, also friendly." He opened the door slowly. FBI agents swarmed in immediately, weapons drawn, shouting commands. They threw Hardwick to the ground, cuffed him, searched him roughly. Two agents moved to Morgan, saw her weapon, ordered her to put it down. She complied carefully, setting the Glock on the floor, raising her hands. "Morgan Reese," she said, "DoD contractor. I'm cooperating." One agent kept her covered while another searched her, found her phone, her ID, the burner she'd bought earlier. "She's clean," the agent said. A woman in a FBI jacket approached, early 40s, dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, eyes that had seen too much nonsense to be impressed by anything. "Special Agent Lisa Brennan," she said. "You're going to need to come with us." "Am I under arrest?" "That depends on what you tell us in the next 6 hours." Brennan gestured to two agents who took Morgan's arms. Not rough, but not gentle either. "We've got a lot of questions, Ms. Reese, starting with why you're in a hotel room with a fugitive who's wanted for multiple murders." "He invited me. I wanted answers." "Did you get them?" Morgan looked at Hardwick, who was being hauled to his feet by 4 agents. He met her eyes, nodded slightly. "Yeah," Morgan said. "I got answers." They separated her from Hardwick immediately. Different vehicles, different routes, different destinations. Morgan ended up in a federal building somewhere in downtown Denver, in an interview room that smelled like burned coffee and broken dreams. Special Agent Brennan sat across from her, a digital recorder on the table between them. "Let's start from the beginning," Brennan said. "When did you first arrive at Riverside General Hospital?" Morgan told her everything. The assault by Marcus Webb, Derek's cardiac arrest, Hammond's confession, the shootout in the ICU, Derek's death, Hardwick's files. She spoke for 3 hours straight, drinking stale coffee and answering questions until her voice went hoarse. When she finished, Brennan sat back, studying her. "That's quite a story," the agent said. "It's the truth." "Is it because, from where I'm sitting, you're a military contractor who shot a hospital administrator and is now claiming elaborate conspiracy to justify it?" Morgan's exhaustion boiled into anger. "Check the evidence. Check Hammond's syringe. Check Derek's talk screen. Check the damn security footage. Everything I'm telling you can be verified." "We are checking it, but verification takes time." Brennan tapped her pen against the table. "In the meantime, you're a material witness to multiple federal crimes, which means you don't leave Denver until we say so." "Am I under arrest?" "Not yet. But don't leave town." Brennan stood. "We'll be in touch." They released Morgan at 4 a.m. She walked out of the federal building into cold darkness, exhausted and wired and not sure what to do next. Her encrypted phone buzzed. A text from Colonel Vega. "Media's about to break the Torrens story. You'll want to see this." Morgan pulled up a news site on her phone, The headline was already changing the world. Senator Torrens arrested in Brazil. Pharmaceutical theft conspiracy alleged. The article detailed everything: the stolen VA medications, the offshore accounts, the shell companies. Within hours, every major network was running the story. Senator Malcolm Torrens, champion of veterans' rights, arrested for stealing from the very people he'd claimed to protect. By dawn, 6 VA administrators had been arrested. By noon, Hammond's lawyer was desperately trying to negotiate a plea deal. By evening, 3 Pentagon officials had resigned. The conspiracy was collapsing in real time, broadcast live on every news channel. And through it all, Morgan's name never appeared. Federal prosecutors kept her involvement classified, protecting their key witness. 2 days later, Morgan was summoned back to the federal building. This time, Special Agent Brennan looked almost friendly. "We verified your story," Brennan said. "Security footage, medical records, witness testimony, everything checks out. You're clear." "What about Hardwick?" "Hardwick's cooperating, giving us everything. Names, accounts, evidence we didn't even know existed." Brennan's expression was complicated. "He's still going to prison for the rest of his life, but he's taking a lot of people with him." "And Derek? What about justice for him?" "Derek Vance will be listed as a fallen federal informant. His family will receive full military honors, survivor benefits, and a formal apology from the Department of Defense." Brennan met Morgan's eyes. "It's not enough." "I know that. But it's what we can offer." Morgan nodded slowly. "When do you need me to testify?" "Trial's probably 18 months out. We'll keep you updated." Brennan slid a business card across the table. "In the meantime, if you need anything, protection, relocation, counseling, call that number." Morgan pocketed the card. "I'm going back to Riverside General." "Why?" "Because someone needs to make sure the next Derek Vance doesn't die alone." Morgan stood. "And because I'm not done yet." She returned to Riverside General Hospital 3 days later. The place had changed. Marcus Webb was gone, facing federal charges. Hammond's office was empty, her name already scrubbed from plaques and directories. Dr. Kellerman had resigned, though prosecutors were still deciding whether to charge him. The whole institution was in chaos, trying to rebuild credibility while federal auditors combed through every record. Morgan walked through the main entrance, past security that now actually checked credentials, up to the ICU, where Derek had died. She stood in the hallway for a long time, just looking at the room where everything had happened. A young nurse approached, early 20s, nervous, wearing scrubs that were too big. "Can I help you?" the nurse asked. Morgan turned. "I used to work here, just paying respects." "You're Morgan Reese." The nurse's eyes went wide. "You're the one who stopped Hammond, who exposed everything." "I'm the one who was there when it happened. Everyone's talking about you, saying you saved the hospital, saying you're a hero." Morgan almost laughed. "I'm not a hero, I'm just someone who refused to look away." The nurse nodded slowly. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "They're saying we need to rebuild trust. Make sure something like this never happens again. But how? How do you fix a system this broken?" Morgan thought about Hardwick's files, Hammond's confession, all the people who'd participated in corruption because it was easier than fighting it. "You start by telling the truth," she said. "Even when it's hard, even when it costs you. You tell the truth and you refuse to compromise, and eventually the system changes because enough people demand it." "That's it?" "That's everything." The nurse smiled uncertainly, then walked away. Morgan stood alone in the hallway, surrounded by ghosts and memories, and allowed herself to feel what she'd been suppressing for days. Derek was dead. 12 other whistleblowers were dead. Hundreds of veterans had died waiting for medications that were sold to fund political campaigns. And the system that had allowed it all, the bureaucracy, the corruption, the willful blindness, was still largely intact. Torrens and Hammond and the others would go to prison, but the structures that enabled them remained. Her encrypted phone buzzed one final time. A text from Hardwick, sent from federal custody. "They're offering me a deal. 20 years instead of life if I keep cooperating. My lawyer says I should take it, but I wanted you to know everything I showed you was real. Every file, every recording. And there's more. A lot more. People we haven't touched yet. Operations we haven't exposed. If you want to keep fighting, if you want to finish what Derek started, the evidence is waiting. Password is his military ID number. You'll know what to do with it." Morgan stared at the message. She could walk away. Testify at the trials, then disappear into civilian life. Get a normal job, a normal existence. Leave the fighting to other people. Or she could open Hardwick's files, see what other conspiracies were hidden in the data, continue the work that had gotten Derek killed. It wasn't really a choice. Morgan pulled out her laptop, accessed the encrypted server Hardwick had mentioned, entered Derek's military ID number. The files unlocked. What she found made everything before look small. Torrens hadn't been working alone. The pharmaceutical theft was just one operation in a network that spanned the entire federal government. Defense contracts, VA benefits, military procurement, all of it compromised, all of it weaponized to funnel money to people who viewed public service as a path to private wealth. And at the center of it all, funding everything, a single name, Maxwell Garrett, billionaire defense contractor, and one of the most powerful lobbyists in Washington. Morgan had never heard of him, which meant he'd been very good at staying hidden. She kept reading, deeper and deeper into the files, until dawn light filtered through the ICU windows and she realized she'd been reading for 6 hours straight. Her phone rang. Colonel Vega. Reese, we need to talk. About what? About the fact that Maxwell Garrett's lawyers just filed a defamation suit against the Department of Defense, claiming we falsely implicated him in Hardwick's conspiracy. Morgan's blood went cold. How did he know? The files aren't public yet. I just accessed them an hour ago. Vega's voice was grim. Then we've got another leak, and whoever it is just tipped off the one person we absolutely can't afford to spook. Morgan looked at the files on her screen, at the evidence of corruption that reached all the way to the Pentagon, the Senate, the highest levels of power. And she realized Hardwick's final message hadn't been an offer. It had been a warning. The real war hadn't ended when they arrested Torrens and Hammond. It was just beginning. Morgan didn't sleep that night. Instead, she read every file Hardwick had left behind, tracing connections that stretched from Riverside General to the Pentagon to Capitol Hill. Maxwell Garrett's name appeared 873 times across the documents. Defense contracts awarded to his companies despite cheaper bids. VA medication purchases routed through his distributors at inflated prices. Campaign contributions flowing to senators who then voted exactly how he needed them to vote. It was systematic, elegant, almost beautiful in its ruthlessness. And now he knew someone was looking. Her encrypted phone rang at 6 a.m. Colonel Vega, sounding like she hadn't slept either. We've got movement, Vega said without preamble. Garrett's lawyers just filed motions to seal all federal evidence related to the Torrens case, claiming it contains proprietary business information. They're arguing that public disclosure would damage his companies. He's trying to bury the evidence before anyone sees it. Exactly. And he's got senators backing him up. 5 members of the Armed Services Committee just sent a letter to the Attorney General expressing concern about prosecutorial overreach. Vega's frustration was audible. This bastard has reach we didn't anticipate. Morgan pulled up one of Hardwick's files, a spreadsheet tracking political donations. Garrett had given money to 47 current senators, 93 representatives, and both major political parties. He didn't pick sides. He bought everyone. We need to go public with this before he shuts it down, Morgan said. We can't. The evidence is classified. Federal prosecutors control release, and they're being extremely cautious about what gets out. Vega paused. But there might be another way. I'm listening. Congressional testimony. If you testify before the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee about what you witnessed at Riverside General, it becomes part of the public record. Protected speech. Garrett can't suppress it, can't seal it, can't make it disappear. Morgan understood immediately. You want me to say Garrett's name under oath. I want you to tell the truth about what you saw. If that truth happens to include Maxwell Garrett's involvement in stealing from veterans, then that's just facts. Vega's voice hardened. But Reese, you need to understand what you'd be walking into. Garrett will come after you with everything he has. Lawsuits, private investigators, media campaigns. He'll try to destroy your credibility, your reputation, your entire life. Let him try. I'm serious. This man has unlimited resources and no conscience. He's already destroyed people for far less than what you're about to do. Morgan thought about Derek lying in a morgue because he'd tried to expose corruption. Thought about Jennifer Walsh, killed in a staged accident. Thought about all the veterans who died waiting for medications that were sold to fund political campaigns. When's the hearing? She asked. 3 days. Can you be ready? I'm ready now. The Senate Veterans Affairs Committee hearing room was designed to intimidate. High ceilings, marble columns, senators seated on an elevated platform looking down at witnesses like judges passing sentence. Gallery seats packed with media, lobbyists, and people whose job was to make sure nothing too embarrassing happened. Morgan walked in wearing her old Army dress uniform, the one she'd sworn she'd never put on again after leaving service. But this wasn't about her comfort. This was about reminding everyone who she'd been, what she'd sacrificed, why her words carried weight. The committee chairman, Senator Richard Moss, 68, recipient of significant Garrett campaign contributions, looked at her like she was something unpleasant he'd found on his shoe. "Ms. Reese," he said, not bothering with pleasantries, "you understand you're under oath." "Yes, Senator." "And you understand that false testimony before Congress carries serious criminal penalties?" "I do." "Then let's begin." Moss shuffled papers like he'd rather be anywhere else. "You were employed as a medical contractor at Riverside General Hospital during the events surrounding the arrest of Administrator Patricia Hammond. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And you witnessed what you claim was a conspiracy to steal military pharmaceutical supplies." "I witnessed an actual conspiracy to steal military pharmaceutical supplies. There's no claim about it." Several senators shifted uncomfortably. Moss's smile was thin and sharp. "Ms. Reese, this committee has reviewed the evidence against Ms. Hammond and Senator Torrens. Both cases are proceeding through the justice system. What we're trying to determine today is whether there are broader systemic issues that require legislative action." Translation: stick to the script, don't name names, let us pretend we're doing something while actually doing nothing. Morgan had spent 3 days preparing for exactly this. "Senator, with respect, the systemic issues go far beyond two people," she said clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "The pharmaceutical theft network operated through multiple hospitals across 6 states. It required coordination from VA administrators, Pentagon procurement officers, and civilian contractors with access to military supply chains." "Yes, we're aware." "I'm not finished." Morgan didn't raise her voice. Didn't need to. The network couldn't have functioned without someone at the top coordinating everything. Someone with enough political influence to suppress investigations. Someone with enough money to buy compliance from dozens of people. Someone like Maxwell Garrett. The room went dead silent. Moss's face turned red. "Ms. Reese, that's a very serious accusation." It's a statement of fact, Senator. Mr. Garrett's companies were the primary distributors for VA medication contracts. His lobbyists pushed legislation that routed procurement through specific channels he controlled. And when people like Sergeant Derek Vance discovered the theft, they ended up dead. Morgan pulled a document from her folder. "I have here a list of 12 whistleblowers who died under suspicious circumstances while investigating pharmaceutical irregularities. All 12 were looking at contracts awarded to Garrett Industries." "Where did you get that list?" Moss demanded. "From Lieutenant Colonel James Hardwick's files, which are now part of federal evidence." Another senator, younger, ambitious, not yet completely bought, leaned forward. "Ms. Reese, are you saying Maxwell Garrett personally ordered these deaths?" "I'm saying the pattern is clear. People who threatened his profits ended up dead. Whether he gave direct orders or just created an environment where subordinates knew what needed to happen, the result is the same." Moss banged his gavel. "This is outrageous speculation." "Is it?" Morgan met his eyes. "Then let's examine the evidence. Let's have Mr. Garrett testify under oath about his company's involvement. Let's open the books, follow the money, see where it leads." "Mr. Garrett is a respected businessman." "Mr. Garrett is a defense contractor who's been stealing from veterans for years while hiding behind political donations and bought senators." Morgan's voice cut like surgical steel. "And everyone in this room knows it. The only question is whether you have the courage to do something about it." Moss looked like he wanted to have her arrested. But cameras were rolling, media was watching. And Morgan had just said things that couldn't be unsaid, asked questions that couldn't be ignored. The hearing continued for 3 more hours. Other senators asked questions, some hostile, some genuinely curious, all of them recorded for public consumption. Morgan answered everything with the same calm precision, never wavering, never backing down. When it was over, she walked out of the committee room into a wall of reporters. "Ms. Reese, do you stand by your accusations against Maxwell Garrett?" "They're not accusations, they're facts." "Mr. Garrett's lawyers are calling you a conspiracy theorist." "Mr. Garrett's lawyers are welcome to sue me for defamation. Discovery will be interesting." "What do you say to people who claim you're just a disgruntled contractor seeking attention?" Morgan stopped, turned to face the cameras directly. "I say Derek Vance is dead. Jennifer Walsh is dead. 12 other whistleblowers are dead. And if calling that out makes me a conspiracy theorist, then every reporter in this hallway needs to ask themselves why they're more interested in my credibility than in finding out who killed those people." The question stopped. Morgan walked away. Maxwell Garrett's response came 6 hours later. A primetime interview on the most-watched cable news network, sitting in an expensive office with American flags positioned perfectly in frame. "Ms. Reese is clearly a troubled individual," Garrett said, his voice smooth and practiced. "I have nothing but sympathy for what she's been through. Combat service, PTSD, the traumatic events at Riverside General. It's understandable that she might see conspiracies where none exist." The interviewer nodded sympathetically. "Your companies do billions in business with the federal government, and we're proud of that service. Every contract awarded to Garrett Industries goes through rigorous competitive bidding. Every medication we distribute meets the highest quality standards. The implication that we've somehow stolen from veterans is not just false. It's offensive to the thousands of employees who work every day to support our military." "What about the whistleblower deaths Ms. Reese mentioned?" "Tragic coincidences that conspiracy theorists have twisted into something sinister. I've asked my legal team to compile evidence proving there's no connection whatsoever between those deaths and my business operations." Morgan watched the interview from a hotel room in Alexandria, feeling ice form in her stomach. Garrett was good. Sympathetic, reasonable, the picture of wounded innocence. If she hadn't seen the evidence, she might have believed him herself. Her phone rang. "Special Agent Brennan." "You stirred up a hornet's nest," Brennan said. "That was the idea. Garrett's lawyers filed a defamation suit against you an hour ago, seeking $50 million in damages." "Good. Discovery will give us access to all his financial records." "That's what we're hoping. But Reese, you need to be careful. This man doesn't just fight in court. He fights dirty." Brennan paused. "We've already intercepted 3 separate attempts by private investigators to dig into your background. Medical records, financial history, military service files. They're looking for anything they can use to discredit you. Let them look. I've got nothing to hide." "Everyone's got something, and these people are very good at making nothing look like something." Brennan's voice was worried. "Watch your back." The attack started the next morning. Articles appeared in friendly publications questioning Morgan's mental health. Anonymous sources claimed she'd been discharged from the military for psychological issues, completely false, but the damage was done. Social media accounts with thousands of followers started sharing posts about unhinged veterans making wild accusations. It was coordinated, professional, designed to destroy her credibility before the defamation suit even went to trial. Morgan ignored it all. Instead, she spent her time working with federal prosecutors, organizing evidence, preparing for the battle ahead. 2 weeks after her testimony, the Justice Department announced a massive expansion of the pharmaceutical theft investigation. Subpoenas were issued to Garrett Industries and 6 affiliated companies. Congressional committees launched their own inquiries. Media outlets that had ignored the story suddenly couldn't stop covering it. The dam had broken. Garrett fought back hard. His lawyers filed motions to quash subpoenas, claiming prosecutorial harassment. His lobbyists worked overtime to kill the congressional investigations. His PR team launched a campaign painting him as a victim of government overreach. But the evidence kept mounting. Financial records showing suspicious payments, emails discussing shipment irregularities, whistleblower testimony from people who'd been too scared to speak before but found courage watching Morgan refuse to back down. 3 months after the Senate hearing, federal prosecutors announced indictments. Maxwell Garrett was charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, theft of government property, and racketeering. 6 executives from his companies faced similar charges. The indictment was 93 pages long and detailed a conspiracy that had stolen an estimated $70 million from veteran medical programs. Garrett's arrest made front-page news. The photo showed him in handcuffs being led from his mansion, his expensive suit rumpled, his face finally showing the fear he'd hidden behind lawyers and political connections. Morgan didn't celebrate. She just felt tired. The trial took 8 months. Morgan testified for 3 days straight, walking the jury through everything she'd witnessed at Riverside General, explaining how the theft network operated, connecting dots between Hammond, Torrens, and Garrett's companies. Defense attorneys tried to break her, questioned her credibility, her motives, her mental health. But Morgan had been preparing for this since the moment she'd decided to testify. She answered every question calmly, stuck to facts, refused to be rattled. When it was over, the jury deliberated for 6 days. The verdict came back unanimous, guilty on all counts. Maxwell Garrett was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. His companies were ordered to pay $300 million in restitution to the VA. Patricia Hammond received 18 years. Senator Torrens got 22 years. James Hardwick, who'd cooperated extensively, received 15 years, less than he deserved, more than he'd hoped. Marcus Webb, the security chief who'd started everything by assaulting Morgan that morning at Riverside General, pleaded guilty to federal obstruction and assault charges. He got 6 years. The day the verdicts were announced, Morgan stood outside the courthouse surrounded by reporters, asking how she felt. "I feel like justice took too long and cost too many lives," she said. "But at least it finally came. What's next for you?" Morgan looked at the cameras, thinking about all the people watching who'd been victimized by systems that didn't care about them. Veterans betrayed by the VA, nurses bullied by administrators, whistleblowers silenced by people with power. "I'm starting a foundation," she said. "The Derek Vance Memorial Fund will provide legal support and protection for whistleblowers in the medical and veterans affairs sectors. Because the only thing that stops corruption is people brave enough to speak up, and those people shouldn't have to fight alone." 6 months later, the foundation was operational. Morgan worked 18-hour days, fundraising, recruiting lawyers, building networks to protect the next generation of whistleblowers. It was exhausting, often frustrating, occasionally heartbreaking. But it mattered. One afternoon, a young VA nurse reached out. She'd discovered medication discrepancies at her facility, was scared to report them, didn't know what to do. Morgan spent 2 hours on the phone with her, walking her through the process, promising protection, making sure she knew she wasn't alone. 2 months after that, the nurse's testimony led to arrests of 3 VA administrators who'd been running a smaller version of Garrett's operation. Morgan got a text from the nurse afterward. "Thank you for giving me the courage. I couldn't have done this without you." Morgan saved that text, looked at it whenever she felt overwhelmed or wondered if any of this made a difference. It did make a difference. One person at a time, one case at a time, slowly changing a system that had been broken for decades. A year after the trial, Morgan returned to Riverside General Hospital. The place had changed dramatically. New leadership, new security protocols, federal oversight to ensure compliance. The culture of intimidation and abuse that had thrived under Hammond was gone, replaced by something cautiously optimistic. Morgan stood in the ICU hallway where Derek had died, where she'd fought Hammond, where everything had started. A young doctor approached, someone Morgan didn't recognize. "Can I help you?" the doctor asked. "Just visiting. I used to work here." "You're Morgan Reese." The doctor's eyes widened. "You're the one who exposed everything." "I'm the one who was there when it happened." "Everyone here knows what you did. They teach your case in medical ethics classes now. Use it as an example of what healthcare workers should do when they encounter institutional corruption." Morgan smiled faintly. "Do they mention the part where I got assaulted, shot someone, and almost got killed half a dozen times?" "They mention that real courage isn't convenient, that doing the right thing often costs everything." The doctor hesitated. "I just want to say thank you. Because of you, this hospital is actually safe to work in now. Because of you, nurses don't get harassed by security. Because of you, patients like Derek Vance get the care they deserve." Morgan felt something loosen in her chest, a tension she'd been carrying since that morning when Marcus Webb had slammed her against a wall and changed her life forever. "Derek deserved better than he got," she said quietly. "Maybe, but because of what you did after he died, thousands of other veterans will get the care he didn't. That has to count for something." It did count for something. Morgan knew that intellectually, but emotionally, she still carried the weight of everyone who'd died before she could save them. She walked through the hospital one more time, past the emergency entrance where she'd first arrived, past the security desk where Marcus Webb used to intimidate staff, past the ICU where she'd fought for Derek's life and lost. But she'd won something too. Not just convictions and sentences, not just a foundation and policy changes. She'd proven that one person refusing to back down could matter, that systems could change when enough people demanded it. That power, real power, didn't come from titles or money or political connections. It came from standing up when everyone told you to sit down, from speaking truth when lies were easier, from fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. Morgan left Riverside General Hospital for the last time as the sun set over the city. Her phone buzzed with notifications. 3 new whistleblower cases, 2 media requests, a senator's office asking her to testify about healthcare reform legislation. The work never ended. But that was okay, because somewhere in America, a nurse was discovering medication discrepancies and would know who to call. A veteran was being denied care and would have someone fighting for them. A hospital administrator was thinking twice about covering up abuse because they knew people like Morgan existed. She'd been the nurse they threw out of the hospital. The woman security dragged across the floor like she was worthless. The person everyone underestimated until it was too late. And now she was the reason corrupt officials checked their rearview mirrors. The reason whistleblowers had hope. The reason the system that had protected people like Garrett and Hammond and Torrens was slowly, painfully, finally changing. Morgan climbed into her car, started the engine, and drove toward whatever came next. Behind her, Riverside General Hospital stood against the darkening sky, its windows glowing with light, its halls filled with people trying to heal and be healed. And in an ICU room on the 7th floor, a patient was coding. But this time, when the alarms went off, a nurse ran toward them instead of away. Because Morgan Reese had proven that running toward danger, standing up for what's right, refusing to accept that things can't change, that's how you save lives. That's how you honor the people who died trying. That's how one person, dismissed and underestimated and thrown away, can become the reason thousands of others survive. The nurse they treated like trash became the reason the whole system had to rebuild itself into something better. And everyone who'd underestimated her spent years learning exactly what it cost to mistake quiet strength for weakness. Morgan drove into the night toward her foundation, toward her purpose, toward a future where maybe, just maybe, the next Derek Vance wouldn't have to die to expose corruption. The work continued, the fight went on, and she was ready.